Go. Are we live?
Not yet. We're good? Okay, we're good.
We're good? All right, we are ready to roll. Welcome to our Board of Education meeting. We're going to officially call this meeting to order. Today is not a normal day we meet. It is a Thursday, August 12th, 2021. Let's start by indicating who's here with Clark.
Clark Nelson.
Chris Wynn.
David Garrett.
Nicole McDermott.
Connie Burgess.
Julie Jackson.
Terry Bodden.
Karen Winder.
Rich Nye.
All right, we have two admin reports to begin with this evening, both of good importance. So we, first of all, have an Essa Report. Rick Anthony is lined up and ready to walk us through this presentation.
Board President, board members, superintendency, thank you for the opportunity. Objectives. The first is reviewing some of our prior ESSER plans, ESSER 1 and 2, providing a summary of both our new allowable expenses that we will have in ESSER 3 and also some of the plan requirements that we'll have in ESSER 3. And then I want to provide a summary for you of how we've allocated the funds from both ESSER 1, 2, and what we're projecting, how we're projecting to allocate for ESSER 3. Most of these allowable expenses were there for ESSER 1 and 2, so this is a little bit of a review. Provide principals and other school leaders resources to address location needs. You'll notice from all of these allowable expenses, they're quite flexible. And that first bullet alone is quite flexible, which is a nice thing. Allowable uses are supplemental after-school programs, summer classroom and distance learning, activities to address unique needs of vulnerable student populations, address the impact of lost instructional time, which includes assessment, learning activities, parent support, attendance, and student disengagement. Allowable uses include at-risk individual student plans, purchasing educational technology, hardware, software, and connectivity that aids in the interaction between teacher and student, providing mental health supports, developing and implementing procedures and systems to improve preparedness and response in the district. This is safety related. Purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean, training on sanitation, and minimizing spread of infections and diseases. All of those were allowable expenses with ESSER 1 and 2 money as well. So they are allowable with 3. The new allowable expense is related to facilities. So the 2 bullets I have here are school facility repairs and improvements to reduce risk of virus transmission and to support student health needs. The second is inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrade projects to improve indoor air quality in schools. And immediately you go to some of these first bullets like ventilation, air conditioning, filtration, and those obviously are all allowable. But looking over the federal allowable uses examples, they start allowing things like window replacement or door replacement or carpet for tile, or tile for carpet, under this idea of easier to keep clean. So again, these 2 new allowable expenses are quite flexible and leave a lot of interpretation. Now, when it comes to these, USBE is built in a check, if you will. So when we go to use ESSER funds for facility rate related things, we fill out essentially a form that gets submitted to USBE for review. The sub-bullets I have in there, and I won't read each of those, but they're all what they want to see in that form. Description, timeline, etc. Compliance responsibilities, construction approval process, things Don and his team are very familiar with doing and how they work. USBE's promised us to give us a response within 14 days. And they all have to be completed by the time the funding is used up. So that is a nuance, meaning the ESSER 3 funding ends fall of September 24. the projects have to be done by 24. So that's a piece for us that we want to really keep in mind as we're looking to use the funding, especially knowing construction delays and where we're at with construction and those types of things in general. So we'll be real strategic about the projects we do that we can have them completed. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here to the requirements of the Essa application. And our plan is to have this application ready and on the consent agenda for next month's board meeting. So these bullets I'm going to review are what they're going to ask us to provide in that application to USBE. We'll have it done, ready, and in your packet for consent next board meeting. They're due. They have to have been approved by you, and they're due September 17th. So they're going to want to make sure that we are setting aside a minimum of 20% of the ESSER funds to accelerate learning through the implementation of evidence-based practices. Accelerate student learning is a better way of, and a more glass full way of talking through learning loss. Learning loss has somewhat of a negative connotation. Accelerating learning is a different kind of mindset and approach to getting kids up and ahead and up to speed. We're going to have to speak to that. The district must engage in meaningful consultation with stakeholders and traditionally underrepresented groups and taking the input into account in developing the plan. We have conducted a survey, and I'm going to share with you the results of that survey here. The board would need to adopt it in a public and open meeting, thus the next month's meeting and consent. Our stakeholder consultation, we conducted a survey of granted stakeholders, which included students, parents, employees, administrators, and district office employees. School employees, district office, separating those two groups. We had a great response rate at over 5,000 responses, which is, you've conducted several surveys and know that's a good response rate for us. I visually just showed you those same numbers, but in a pie chart. The overwhelming response was from parents. So someone taking the survey would designate themselves as one of these roles. There is a nuance where we do have some school employees who are also parents, and we did force them to make that decision. So some of those parents could be technically school employees as well. We didn't want a really long survey because we know really lengthy surveys, you get fatigue and people, you don't get the response rate that you want. So we really focused on providing them some drop-down choices of how they would like the district to effectively use the funding. And what I have done is just put those choices that were the most selected choice to the least selected option. So I rank ordered them, with number one being this box was checked the most by all of those that responded. And I'm happy to share the details or the back end of this survey if you'd like. So, at number one there was additional classroom aides and paraprofessionals to assist teachers with instruction. Second, increased social and emotional services. Third, enhanced extracurricular options. And I'll let you just read through those. Summer school being 5, and we work our way down. Some of the ones that were least checked: enhance access to physical activities, student attendance initiatives, improve parent engagement initiatives. So again, our top 3 areas were social, emotional, extracurricular, and enhancing classroom individuals in classrooms with kids. We didn't specifically have a lower class size option in there, but if I was to guess, I would think that was the person responding, they're thinking when they check that box as well. We know coming into this year that we've got some compromised student outcomes, and we're very aware that we have assessments, and I'm going to borrow some vocabulary from the superintendents. We have some leading indicators or some assessments or measures that give us really quick turnaround on where kids are at. And then we have some lagging measures as well, or lagging indicators. So when we look at our student attendance, credits earned, our cadence, a cadence is a new name for Dibbles. Dibbles you might be real familiar with in elementary school. Dibbles has a reading assessment, and that's been around for years. A cadence, very similar. We're adding this year a math, and the way I'm oversimplifying is it's math Dibbles, essentially. It's a beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, a quick assessment on math for K-3 students. Secondary runs a reading inventory. We have our Granite benchmarks. Then, of course, we have teacher assessments where they're taking a look at where kids are at and comparing that to past years. Behavior data as well. Some of our larger assessments that really only come around in springs are our WIDA, which is an English language development assessment, RISE, Utah Aspire Plus, the ACT, and then our graduation rates as well. So we're going to be monitoring all of those things closely. Some of these leading indicators, though, we're going to really, out of the gate, get a sense of where kids are at, and that'll influence our strategy. We shift gears again to investing the funding, or how we're going to use the funding with ESSER 3. We're essentially going to split it into thirds. We're going to send a third out to schools in an allocation, a per pupil allocation, PPA. And then a third we're going to reserve for district type projects, which oftentimes are things like more counselors, more social workers, increased BHA support. And then we're going to reserve a third for what I described as the new allowable uses, facility uses. So I'll break that down. On the school end, here's the things that we've seen a lot with ESSER 2, the way schools are using ESSER 2 funding, lowering class size in elementaries, preventing split classes. So if they're a half teacher behind, they're able to make that up and prevent having a split. Obviously, increasing aid support, social worker support. We use ESSER 2 funding for summer school and after school, and then additional professional learning opportunities for teachers as well. Some of the programmatic uses that we use, this would be kind of that second out of the three areas we're going to use funding. Granted Online Live. The Granted Online Live that we're offering, it will be funded out of ESSER 3. We'll increase ratios of social workers, counselors, and psychologists from a district end. Add behavior support services, increase our ratio of literacy coaches. We're acutely aware of early literacy and our need to make sure we have acceleration there. Contract subs. Substitute teachers has been problematic for us, and so just strategically looking at how we can ensure we have those subs. Increasing hardware, software, and connectivity. We'll do a lot of that with educational technology. COVID nurse support. Granite Connection High, we suspect maybe we will have some students who are quite behind and missed a lot of school and are getting close to that senior year. And so adding some additional supports at our alternative high school to make sure that they have low class size and are meeting those students' needs. Then facility repair and improvements would be that third chunk of the money, and I'll break that down for you. How we used ESSER money, that was the CARES Act, and Granite received $10 million there. We used most of that just for program allocations. We bought a lot of COVID supplies, et cetera, for schools. When ESSER 2 came out with the CRRSA Act, Granite received $43 million there, and that, the way we distributed that allocation is that's where we created a PPA and sent funding out to schools. And then third here with ESSER 3, I'm highlighting in yellow how we're carving out a third of that for some facility use, ventilation, safety, et cetera. And that is the largest of the three at $97 million. In the plan that you will see for our next board meeting, they're going to ask us how we plan to engage in the continuous improvement process. They're going to ask us to have an analysis based on leading indicators. So they're going to say, based on these, what you're seeing from student outcomes, what's your analysis of where you're at? They're going to ask us for our plan and how we're going to use evidence-based activities to address compromised learning. They're going to have us speak to the implementation plan, and then even speak to how do we plan to evaluate how it's gone and adjust if necessary. Some of that we will use lagging indicators, so the big evaluation will come at the end of the year. I just wanted to highlight, so that will be a piece of the plan that you'll see. You'll also see us describe, they'll ask us to describe our plan for the use of remaining funds, our plan to have and commitment to a safe return, how we're going to comply with the act, and I've made a sub-bullet there of just, they'll want to know equitable access for students and how we're ensuring that's happening. They'll ask us for assurances as well. So oftentimes these come in the form of, you promise not to do this, or you promise to do this, and you're just agreeing to do those assurances. I don't expect that to be a long review. Oftentimes with these, we've seen that they're quite general, and honestly, I expect just what you see here and our answers in that plan. Any questions you might have?
Indirect costs, I mean, 3% seems really little until you realize it's 3% of 97 million. What are those indirect costs? Just curious.
I've rounded up there to, I want to say it's 2.96
Okay.
or something. Typically, that's just for the processing and paperwork.
Actually, I was going to ask something about that too, but I think it clears it up.
But what do you mean it's a set rate? Who's setting the rate and what's it covering?
So federally, when it comes to the monies, you'll have federal monies and you'll have state monies, and then you'll just have other grant monies. And sometimes as a district, we have Clark, you're probably more authority on the accounting side than me, but just this.
Grant agency that's facilitating the grant, or
Chris could probably explain the indirect cost rate. It's approved at the state level. We have two rates that we are given each year. And what do they cover, Chris?
I don't know if you want me to.
Just take a minute at the
It's
mic
right there.
there.
Just pull that mic down so people online can hear.
Okay. So the USBE serves as our negotiating party with the federal government every year, and they do that for every district statewide. And they have built into the reporting that we provide them at the end of every fiscal year, where they look at all of our direct costs for grants, and then they look at all of the overhead costs, the facility and administrative costs. And based on the formula that they have negotiated and with the federal government, they plug all of our results, every district's results, into this formula, and it spits out what every district's indirect cost rate is for the upcoming year. So there's really a lag in how the formula is calculated and what period it applies to. And there's intent there. It provides a 3-year rolling average in calculating what that rate is. But essentially, it's all of the facility and administrative overhead costs that the district incurs to do business.
I think a nuance you're asking too is, does that money go to someone? Yes. If we might not use that.
Costs end up being. We've never really had a federal grant on the magnitude of $87 million. So we're a little bit in uncharted territory there, but typically we have far more facility and administrative overhead costs than we recapture. But that formula is intended to try and even that out so that we do recover that. And I suspect that the expenses that we incur will, in future years, will push our rate down based on this, the large amount of indirect costs that we've recovered through this ESSER 3 grant, I would suspect.
Julie.
Rick, so I just want to make sure my expectation is right here. For our next board meeting, we will be voting on a plan based on kind of what you've said are the expectations for the application, right?
Correct.
And I feel like what I'm reading here tells me that this is going to be rather detailed. Like, we're going to know what all those projects are pretty,
Yes and no. We will have a I don't know that I would go to extreme detail, and Don's perking up back there.
Okay, Don, do you want to address that?
I can answer that. Our response for the capital has.
We can't hear you, Don. You got to move your mic.
mic's
I can hear you, but
Is it
online
any
can't
better
hear
now?
you.
Yes.
Okay. So the capital plan has a fairly project type by school listing. It's not going to be prioritized in a manner that we know that this is the worst first. We've actually done it by location number. We'll have to triage that out as we get into it, but you'll have a listing of approximately $34 million worth of projects that we're going to try to accomplish, and we're going to try and accomplish them in a worst first or most beneficial to the student's project environment setting.
That's great. Okay, thanks.
Plan. They're not going to create a lot of detail.
As we engage in different strategies, accelerate learning, we're going to find some things that work really, really well, and we're going to find some things that, we may not be getting as much leverage out of it as we need. So we're going to have to adjust our plan and keep it very dynamic to make sure that we are addressing student impact. And so for that reason, the state board also recognizes that we do need some latitude to be able to make those adjustments as necessary. So when you see the plan, you'll see some very specific things, but there's also areas of latitude to be able to make those adjustments as necessary.
All right, let's go. Nicole has a question, and then after Nicole, we'll go to Chris.
I just wondered, and I didn't think about this before, so I apologize, but is there, because we have to keep track of that 20% of that funding, and when we talked the third of that money that's going to the schools, do the schools now have another thing that they're going to have to fill out to report what they're spending it on?
No, we're very not afraid of spending 20% towards student accelerated learning. We know we're going to go way higher than that, so we're not going to. We're going to pay attention to that, but that's not a piece that we're concerned about closely monitoring because we know we'll be over 20%.
Are you worried at all about schools going, hey, we've been waiting for this for a long time, now we have all this extra money, and they're going to do something that is not?
So, yeah, the allowable uses are quite flexible, but we are leaning on other federal grants, like say Title I, for a lot of our review of the spending. So for example, Title I doesn't allow you to buy gift card incentives for kids. We're not going to allow schools to buy gift card incentives for kids, even though in the allowable use piece there, you could debate
results, the additional classroom aides and paraprofessionals and the increased social emotional services, those are people, and I'm wondering the time frame, like school starts Monday, so are these for this coming school year, or are you kind of looking at this part of it maybe further down based on kind of the results of your survey?
Yes, so two things. One thing, because of the business we're in the human business. A lot of our funding sources, whether it's Land Trust, TSSA, Title I this, go towards what I call lowering the student to adult ratio. We increase the amount of adults in the building, and I use adults because sometimes it's additional teachers, sometimes it's aides, et cetera. So yes, a lot of the strategies will follow that. We plan to do 2 installments, if you will, of the $30 million. So right now, schools have the ESSER II money for this current year. And then the next year, they'll receive half of this COVID-3. So we'll take $15 million and allocate that out to schools. And then the final year, we'll do $15 million again. We're going to follow a kind of an in-house
I wonder, in that money that goes directly to the schools, is that just the discretionary, not that a principal would just make the decision on their own, but is there a community council component of that?
There is not formally, like you see with community council on principals, and I think they've all years ago when there weren't community councils.
Kind of view this as the backbone and goals that you need to meet and boxes to check, but at the same time to come back next month with very specific, Granite-specific goals, and so we're excited to see that. But thank you for putting that together.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, our explanation of a school vaping lawsuit. Now, this is by Doug. Doug's joining us virtually. Are you there, Doug? I can. Wow, it works. Yeah, can you hear me? Excellent. All right, take it away. All right, let's have you come up. Being online, we just ask you to hold that microphone real close so our online listeners can follow along with this. Also, just time management wise, it's 5:35 right now. By law, we have to start our tax hearing right at 6 p.m. So if we're not quite done, we'll need to have a little intermission.
Thank you very much for having us. I know you have a lot. What is vaping? It's usually use of heat to inhale something. It's been around really for thousands of years. But there's a company named Juul that was very clever and very innovative. And their goal, I think, honestly, was to create a smoking cessation device, or a device where people could transition away from smoking. And they made a very good device. They added some special salts to it. They hired some very good scientists. And they were so good at it, they were the fastest company to a $10 billion valuation in the history of the United States. The catch to it was that just like when you eat an apple, you can only get so much sugar. Well, with candy, they can add a lot of different stuff to it. It's the same with vaping. They can highly concentrate the nicotine and make it super addictive. So whatever argument is that it might be different or somehow better for me than smoking, it has an enormous amount of nicotine and makes it enormously addictive. They also added a number of flavors to vaping, creme brulee, mango, that have been enormously popular with the underage crowd. Juul was very aware that a substantial portion of their product was being used by minors. I heard Senator Mitt Romney say lately that he estimates that at least half of the flavored vaping products that are sold in Utah are being used by kids under the age of 21. There's still an astonishing amount of product that is being passed down and used illegally. Even if that's not the intent and there are some restrictions in place. So is vaping an issue of concern here? Well, it's interesting, if you look at the SHARP data, about 39% of 12th graders in Salt Lake County have reported vaping, with approximately 16% of 12th graders reporting vaping in the last 30 days. Now you compare that to cigarette smoking. Approximately 13.7% of 12th graders report using cigarettes, and that rate is way down from 21% a few years ago. In addition, the use of cigarettes in the last 30 days is only 3%. In other words, a 12th grader in Salt Lake County is about 5 times more likely to be vaping than smoking right now. But a lot of our institutions and our health classes, our religious institutions and other groups are just simply behind the curve. This has become very prevalent very quickly. The world is changing very quickly, and vaping is really the cutting edge. Also, you kind of figure out smoking, cigarette smoking, you know what it is. Vaping has exploded with a wide range of products. There are now vaping devices you can buy that for only like $10, $12 that are disposable. You can get 400 puffs on them. That could last a kid easily a week. And it also makes it very hard to even catch them. They're able frequently to do it in class. I was talking to a principal at Harriman High a little while back, and he caught a kid was caught vaping and pulled into his office. And the vice principal said, I was having a bad day, and I was already at my limit. And I probably used a tone of voice that wasn't appropriate with this young person. And he said, why are you vaping? You're a good kid. You have a lot of potential. Why are you doing this? And the kid's like, you want to know the truth? Because I want to pay attention in class. I can't make it through an 80-minute class without vaping. It gives me the energy and the focus I need to pay attention in class. He's like, you're serious, aren't you? I'm completely serious. And that's true. That's what the nicotine does to you. It makes you truly a slave at the 5% level. So this lawsuit, about 450 school districts have signed up throughout the country. Here in Utah, Provo and Ogden have signed up. Both Tooele and Jordan voted unanimously to join a couple days ago. And Canyons has it on their agenda next Tuesday. So it has no cost to you. It's a contingency-based lawsuit. So I'm going to turn that time over now to my colleague, William, and he'll present, and we'll take your questions.
Thank you very much. My name is William Shinoff. I'm an attorney with the France Law Group out of California. I've been handling this litigation now for almost 2 years. My background is I'm actually a former education law attorney. I represented school districts as general counsel and litigation counsel throughout Southern California, and that's really what brought me to this epidemic of vaping. So when I moved on to the France Law Group, which specializes in representing public entities, but on the plaintiff side, I took it on as the opportunity to represent my former clients in California. But over 18 months now, I represent over 460 school districts in 31 states in this case, and which is showing this is a national epidemic that we're dealing with. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of background of what this case really is about, explanation of where this litigation is going and where we're at, and then what our goal is in this case. So this case is what's called a mass action. It's not a class action. So the big difference is in a class action versus mass action is every school district that's involved in this case has their own case on file. The importance of that is, at the end of the day, each one of the districts gets to choose their own destination at the end. Do they want to resolve their case, or do they want to keep on litigating? They're not held to one district or one plaintiff making a decision for everyone else. And so how that works is your district will then file a case in the local federal court here in Utah. And because there are so many plaintiffs in this case, what the court does for efficiency purposes, so we're not litigating this for the next 70 years, is they put it into one courtroom. That courtroom's we're now in the Northern District of California in San Francisco, and we actually have a trial date of March 2022 in this case. This judge has made it very clear he does not want this to be tobacco litigation 2.0 that took 10 years. He sees this as a public health crisis and wants to get to the bottom of what's going on. And so we've been doing the litigation, we've been doing the discovery, all the school districts work together on this. And so what ended up happening recently is that since this case has not been resolved yet, 6 school districts throughout the country have been selected as what we call bellwether cases. So these school districts will be the plaintiffs that have their trials go forward in March of 2022. And the point of it is they're a representative of what these cases would look like if these 2 defendants decided to go forward for trial on each one of these cases, even though, like I said, that would take 60 years to do. And so they're varying in size, location, and so at the end of the day, this will give them an idea of what a jury would find for them on liability and also on damages. And so, as Joel told you, the 2 main defendants in this case are Juul Labs, the vaping company that owns 80% of the vaping market, and the other defendant is Altria, which many of you know as Philip Morris. They invested $13 billion into Juul, and that's why you're seeing the same marketing tactics that tobacco did, again, with vaping. And so our main focus on this case is the fact that they marketed their products to children. And while that's reprehensible what they did, the biggest issue was the fact that they did not warn about the harms of the product. And that's why we're seeing kids still believing to this today that really all they think is vaping water, that it's just flavored water, where that's the furthest thing from the truth. Their product contains a very significant amount of nicotine, and we now have a whole new generation of children that are addicted to nicotine. And so what we're looking for in this case is to be able to provide the financial resources to the school districts to be able to truly battle this issue. And we know that this is not, because of what Joel was explaining to you, the numbers are so high, this is something that's going to take time to resolve. So what we're looking for is, under what's called a theory of public nuisance, we're allowed to request from these companies, if we're able to find them liable, to pay for the future harm, to be able to put in the funds that we need to be able to battle this issue. And so the way that we deal with that is our focus is on deterrence, support, and education. And so the way we handle that.
Does anybody know what that noise is? Ben, can you hear that? There's a whistle.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, well, continue.
William
Hopefully
has several
it
young
goes away.
kids, so this really doesn't bug him at all.
Okay, continue. I just didn't didn't know if that was going to affect the online listeners, so, okay, I apologize for interrupting. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. So like I said, we're focused on deterrence, support, and education, providing those resources. And so one way we know that we can help deter vaping on campus is by getting our clients, the school districts, the money to put in vape detectors. Vape detectors are a big deterrence. We've seen that the school districts in Utah that have started to do it, ones in California that have done it, they have seen their numbers drop. The problem is they're extremely expensive. They cost anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a bathroom. And if you can imagine how much that would cost your district to put in every, let's just say, middle school and high school bathroom, that would be a huge expense. And that's the minimum. They also recommend putting them in classrooms because unfortunately they created a product that's being used in the classroom because it goes away within a matter of seconds without a smell. So it is a huge expense, and so that's one of our goals is getting you the funds to be able to pay for that. Another thing we're looking at is, as I said, this is something that we can't fix overnight. So we're trying to get the funding for you for 5 to 10 years worth of funds to be able to hire additional staff for supervision purposes, because that will help deter vaping on campus. We also want to provide support for students. I grew up in the education field. My father's an education lawyer, and I've been around superintendents a lot. And what they've told me is, you take the child as a whole. You don't get to pick and choose parts of the kid that we want to focus on. So if there's a kid that has an addiction, if there's a kid that's vaping on campus, we can't ignore it. So what we want to do is be able to provide you the ability to hire counselors that have a background in nicotine addiction or addiction, period, to be able to provide support to these kids. And then finally, we're looking to be able to provide you with financing for education. Education is going to be key to really be able to battle this issue, because what parents and students know about the harm of this product and what the truth is, there's a huge gap. And this education will help bridge that gap so students can make educated decisions to stop, and those that will be facing it when they get into middle school and high school, that they will stop and not do it. And also, in addition to looking to get financial resources for districts, we're also requesting to try to create change in this litigation. In litigation, the way we create change is through what we call injunctive relief. So we're requesting a court order to prohibit conduct. So what we're also doing is we're asking the court to prohibit them from marketing to minors, to change the way that they do their marketing, and also to prohibit them from bringing back flavored pods, which is really what brought kids to this product, because right now they have voluntarily pulled that off the shelf. So one thing that has happened in this case that I want to let you know is that we are on this trajectory of a March 2022 trial. We were supposed to have our first public entity trial a month and a half ago in North Carolina, but that case actually resolved on the first day of trial with Juul for $40 million. So we are in a positive direction. And so I want to let you know, and hopefully I can get it in before there's more noises, the three main questions that I end up getting from boards regarding this case. First one is the time consumption to be involved. School districts don't want to voluntarily get involved in litigation. Their staff's already busy. Because this is what's called a multi-district litigation, all that's going to be required from your district to be involved in this case is completing a discovery questionnaire. That will take your staff about 2 to 3 hours to complete. There's going to be no depositions, no court appearances. So that's the time consumption, so pretty minimal. The other is the cost to be involved. As Joel said, we work on this case on a contingency fee basis and not on an hourly basis. So what that means, if there is no financial recovery, there is no cost or fees to the district. Our fee comes from the financial recovery from the district, and our fee has actually, normally for plaintiff litigation, the standard is 40% of the recovery, and we've cut our fee in this case to 20%, and we've also put a cap on the cost to 3%. So at the end of the day, if there is a financial recovery, it would be the 23% of fees and costs that would come from it. And again, there's no financial risk. It can only bring in money to the district. With that being said, we want to open it up for questions.
I have a question. So you said you have a court date, because I noticed that it did say your contingency fee is 20%, but it's 25% after, is it a year?
So what you probably have is the old version of the agreement. We spoke with your counsel, and the agreement has been updated that it's a flat 20% fee.
Okay.
That's been updated.
Doug, yeah, help negotiate that. There's also provision that if you're unhappy at any point, you can drop out and not owe us anything as long as you don't rejoin through someone else.
Okay, and then along with that, I know some lawsuits can go on for years and years and years. Do you expect it? It's good to hear that the judge there has said they'd like to get this going faster through appeals and everything. What would you anticipate the end result? Like, when would we see that?
So there's two endings that could happen here. Either we resolve this case short of trial, in trials March 2022. So that would put us in next year working on negotiating and settling our cases. If there's trial, we're going to be going through these 6 trials next year, and it might take these few trials to get us to a point where we're able to actually negotiate after that. So our expectation, though, at this point, based on the evidence against them, is very strong, that we will see something will happen one way or another by the middle of next year.
I just want to clarify that the trials that would take place in March of 22, that's just 6 out of the MDL. Is that correct?
Correct.
6 districts from around the country?
Correct.
When do you have an anticipated date of when other districts would then approach trial after that date?
It'll be on a rounding basis. So as it is in other MDLs like this, there would be the first round that would happen, and then the other trials would be set within 3 months of that to complete the discovery related to those districts.
Do you mind if I ask a few other quick follow-ups?
Go ahead.
Your fee arrangement is Kurt McConkey's fees inclusive of the 23%, correct? Who's your judge in Northern California that you drew?
Judge Orrick.
Okay. And how many plaintiffs nationwide are you at this point in time?
So my firm, we're currently at 465 school districts and almost 100 charter schools.
So Granite District would be well behind in terms of if in terms of a bellwether trial that's March of 22 and cycling through, we're a long ways away from a potential trial. If Jewel were so inclined to take every case to trial, it could still be years, even though we're in an MDL format.
Correct. And also what they have avoided is to avoid large school districts to be selected. We have wanted the large school districts to be the ones, and we have had them. And so the judge has kind of found the middle ground, and he's allowed us a few large, a few middle, a few small. And so even though you're coming in later on, you could be selected at that next round. And at that point, it would be a discussion with you as the board and your administration of where you want to do, if you want to move forward as a bellwether plaintiff.
Thank you.
Of course.
Carrie.
Dr. Nye, what's your recommendation, and Doug, as far as staff and how we should proceed?
So no question, vaping's had an impact on our students. I would suggest the board consider seriously entering in the mass action. And I know Doug is looking at opportunities to engage as far as legal counsel is concerned as well. So at this point, while we're not taking a position tonight, my recommendation is that we seriously consider it.
Ironically, on this being listed on the... Wait, what, Doug? Perfect. Thanks for that. I was just getting ready to say, ironically enough, we have agenda items listed, and as board members, obviously we get feedback on, how we should proceed, and to be just just to be really honest, I didn't know that this one would really receive any feedback, but ironically enough, I have 2 or 3 emails saying asking our district to actually get into this lawsuit because they've seen the absolute damage of vaping. So I just wanted to share that piece of feedback because I was not anticipating getting feedback on this particular agenda item, but I was happy to receive it. And so,
Most of those are from state school board.
One of them is, but I actually had a couple that were not. But anyway, so I just, feedback is from our community members is always good. And so I just wanted to share that I had that feedback. Any other questions or concerns? We're just minutes away from our budget hearing, or tax hearing.
Is this an action item for next month? Or is it just a recommendation that we kind of give you a nod, yes?
Right, so typically, the board reserves that option. If the board wants to take a formal vote, then something we could work to next month, or and we could engage just administratively and act on it as a district, up to the board.
Well, I'd say let's make the decision and move forward. That's my feeling. Tonight, we don't have to have action. That's my feeling.
Other board members, Clark?
We can't take a vote tonight because it's not on our agenda to vote,
Correct.
So
And we're happy to list this. It's not going to be a big delay to put it on the September agenda as an action. So, but it might, if I'm reading people right, I think that there's a lot of support for it. Tonight's just kind of treat it more like the info item it is and get everything we need to know. And let's see if we hear further feedback over the next 3 weeks, and we'll list it as as an action item next month. Thank you guys for being here. You're very kind to go and answer our questions.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, Doug.
For the advertisement.
Can we wait till after, because we have to start at 6. Yes. But I am gonna call for a recess right after. Before we go, are you okay? All right.
I'll be back here, I promise.
Okay. I'm waiting, Clark. All right, so it's 5:58 on my clock. By law, we have to start this right at 6, and so we can't go early.
Can I ask what happens to us if we started at 6:05?
Thank you. Sherry Swenson is going to not be happy.
If we start at 6:05, what are they? Well, I can be the horse that pulls the pony.
The most unexpected things. Right when I don't expect it. I'm back against things.
Yeah, he will pull the list. They've sent it out. Anybody can send it.
So just a heads up, we're obviously doing some troubleshooting here on our brand new system, and there's some little tweaks and other things. We're connected here to the wall over there on a lengthy cord. We think that that's where the feedback's coming from. We thought it was Doug. It seemed logical that it would be
Well,
Doug
I saw you
giving
trying
us
to
all
mute
that
him.
feedback, right?
Yeah. Well,
So,
what are you saying, Ben?
that's unfair because he's not here to defend himself in person. But I don't know if he's planning on staying on the call. We'll see if that still creeps in here or there. But hopefully we'll get that figured out for future meetings. So we appreciate everybody's patience.
So at 6 o'clock, can we not start? Ben, can I start?
You can start.
All right. right, am I going off of a sign-up list or?
Well, so I
Are
can
we
go ahead
doing
and
the
explain that. We do
presentation
have, yeah, we'll go through the presentation. Superintendent, go ahead, sorry.
No. I was just agreeing, yeah, we'll start with presentation, then move into public comment.
But I would let any individuals here who did want to participate as part of the hearing process to just go ahead. There's a sign-up sheet on the outside on the table there, and as we get close to the end of the presentation, prior to the board's questions, I'll collect those and bring those up, and then we'll call those up in the appropriate order.
All right, now we're going to turn the time. We're going to officially begin our tax hearing. Mitch Robinson is here to kind of walk us through. These are sometimes confusing to understand, and he's going to walk us through the details of the kind of the tax notices.
Okay, thank you. As you mentioned, we're here for a tax hearing tonight. This tax hearing is held in compliance with the Utah law as part of the budget and tax rate setting process for school districts. Just to review that process a little bit, by June 1st annually, we have to have a budget available for public inspection every year. And that budget is posted to our website by June 1st annually. On June the 15th, we held a budget hearing, and the board approved a tentative budget and a tentative property tax rate at that time. And now since that time, there's been some newspaper advertisements. I know a lot of people don't get the newspaper anymore, but the law still requires that we have some newspaper advertising. And the county ran a consolidated ad for all taxing entities within the district. And then Granite placed an ad on August the 6th in the newspaper in compliance with the law. Since that time, the Salt Lake County Auditor's Office mails out property tax notices to everyone in the district. And so everyone should have received those in the mail. I'm sure that all of you have received those. Those notices are also available online as well. And then tonight is the final step in that process is we're holding a tax hearing in compliance with the law. Let's talk about our property tax rate, proposed property tax rate, and bonding and school construction. It's all tied together, and hopefully explain what's happening. So in 2017, the district was looking at different strategies to finance long-term capital and building needs. Okay, that held multiple community meetings and studied different strategies to be able to finance renovation and rebuilding of aging school buildings. And let's look at some of the strategies that we looked at. The first one was a single tax increase that the district could raise. The board has the authority to raise taxes in the capital outlay fund, which is money for buildings. That makes it a little bit difficult to finance a large project such as a high school. The cash flow would be difficult. And the other downside of this option is that it would be the largest tax increase of the options that we looked at. Another option is a series of bonds. So we go to the voters for a bond election, and then come back again 4 or 5 years for another bond election, come back again in another 4 or 5 years for another bond election. That's all right. And the option that we ultimately went with, and that was favored in the community meetings and was a hybrid of both of those models. So the plan was that we go to the voters in November of 2017 for a bond election. We ask for a tax increase to issue bonds, and the tax increase would generate money. We'd set a tax levy to generate money to be able to pay those bonds back as they matured. And then as those bonds matured, and as we didn't need as much money for those bond payments, then we would take that tax levy and move it over to the capital outlay fund and maintain that tax levy so that we could then use those funds on a pay-as-you-go basis for building projects. So this process and that choice of that hybrid model in 2017 is where we started this. The voters approved that bond election with the tax increase in November of 2017, and that started this process.
Could I speak to that a little bit, just briefly? As board recalls, even prior to the election, we did an extensive community input process on those three options to determine if we were even going to bond in the first place. And that concluded with the survey that showed the overwhelming option of voters and patrons within Granite School District to utilize that hybrid model that we invariably chose. And then obviously the bond passed with roughly 58, almost 60% of the vote. So while obviously there's contingency of individuals who are not supportive of that, that was the overwhelming consensus after that extensive community feedback.
Can you just be really clear on that? Half of us here were not on the board at that time. Can you explain, how did you get, I mean, I know as a community member how I was contacted was mostly through the school, but for other people who don't have kids at school, how did you go about contacting them and getting their input on this?
So we utilize, that's a great question. We utilized several different methods over a period of time. Don and I had a show, we called it Don and Ben Show. We went out on the road and we held community meetings in every single network. And we tried to entice people to come to a meeting saying, we're going to talk about your taxes. And kind of walked through the process of our $1 billion capital deficit problem as outlined back in 2017 in a 40-year strategic plan to address that, and how would we go about funding that, and what would be the best model to be able to do so, because rising inflation, obviously the amount of the dollar was not going as far then as even as it is now at this point in time. So obviously getting a lot of feedback that way through general comments, but then we contracted for a survey company to come in with active registered voters and who we knew would participate in a potential bond, and did a survey for us on that end as well.
Not only did you do every network, if people, individual schools or anyone else requested, you were willing to go out and talk to anyone that wanted city. You went all over.
That's correct. That's actually very appropriate. Don and I visited every city council and with all of our elected officials as well as the county, and then went out to individual school community councils as requested as well. But the bigger piece of that is obviously the biggest brunt of our taxpayers do not have children in schools. And so we really tried to make an effort to reach out to them on what they thought would be the best method for funding these capital building projects long term.
All right, Mitch, continue.
Okay, thank you. After the voters approved that bond election, we moved forward, and we've completed some projects already. The Oline Walker Elementary School, the new building. We replaced South Kearns Elementary School, an addition at Hunter High School, and renovations at Driggs and Rosecrest Elementaries. And projects, the two big projects that are currently in progress are Skyline High School and Cypress High School that, work is going on today as we speak, and so this is necessary to continue to finance those projects. So property taxes are a little complicated, and it's tough for most of us to understand the property tax rate setting process and all the different rates that school districts use. I'm going to try and explain that a little bit. What this in under the description column there, we've got a list of the different rates, tax rates that the school district sets every year, that Granite sets. We've got rates that are subject to what's known as truth in taxation, or it's abbreviated on here as TNT. The board local rate, the voted local rate, and the capital local rate basically means that if you bring in more revenue on those tax levies, that you have to hold a tax hearing like we're doing tonight, okay? And then there are some rates that are exempt from truth in taxation. The basic levy, which is set by the legislature, the charter levy, which is also set by the legislature, and that's for Granite sets it, but we're told what rate to set, and that money goes to charter schools within Granite District. And then the debt service levy, and that levy is used to pay back bonds, and it's the voters that give us the authorization to set that levy. When the voters give you approval for the bond, they're giving approval to set that levy at what it's needed to be to raise the revenue to pay the bonds back. In the next column over, we show the fiscal year 21 tax rate. At the bottom, it was a total of a 0.007397. And so for this upcoming school year, we make some adjustments to that. The board local, the voted local, and the capital local rates, those rates that are subject to truth and taxation, because of rising values, taxable values throughout the district, those rates come down somewhat to offset somewhat the rising values. And then the basic levy and the charter levy, again, were set by the legislature. And what we're proposing to do, which is part of the plan that we initially embarked upon in 2017, is to move 0.001126, that tax rate, from the debt service levy up to the capital local levy. So what we're doing is we're moving from a tax levy that is exempt from truth and taxation. We're increasing a tax levy that is not exempt from truth and taxation, so that triggers the need for this tax hearing process. In the end, the tax rate that's proposed for next year is lower than the 21 rate, but of course, we all know that valuations have increased during that same time. And what this move does is bring in additional funding into capital outlay so that we can continue to pay for the work that's currently committed and that's being done at Skyline High School and at Cypress High School. And as those projects are completed, then these funds in the budget would be used for additional projects. Now, we mentioned that everybody received a property tax notice. We want to take a look at that just for a bit. There's several entities that are involved in that property tax notice. The Salt Lake County Auditor's Office mails those notices out. The County Assessor's Office determines a property fair market value for your home or business that shows up on that tax notice. And then the Granite Board of Education sets a tax rate that shows up on there and determines the amount of tax revenue or the amount that the tax bill will be on that property tax notice. Now, there are other taxing entities on that taxing notice as well. There's county, city, library, mosquito abatement. There's a number of taxing entities on that property tax notice. This is a sample of a property tax notice in the district. It just happens to be that the market value up in the upper left-hand corner, the market value on this home is $389,500, which is, the county assessor's office tells me that the average home value in Granite School District is $389,000. So this is right on the average for the school district. You can see at the top, it shows the total property tax, proposed property tax for this property. And then over on the right-hand corner on the top, it says that you appeal to the County Board of Equalization by September 15th of 21. We'll talk a little bit more about that in another slide or two, but basically if your home value is higher than you think that it should be, you can appeal to the Board of Equalization for the value of that home. The next section down shows the 2021 market value on this, and again, it's $389,500. The previous year was $341,800, so a substantial increase in the value of this property per the county assessor's office. Let's look more specifically at the taxes and the tax rates. You see that the first three lines on the tax notice are for Granite District. There's the Granite School District, there's the state basic school levy, and the charter school levy. You remember the basic school levy and the charter school levy are those two levies that are exempt from truth and taxation. Those are rates set by the legislature, so they're out of our control. The Granite School District levy includes those levies that are subject to truth and taxation, and it also includes the debt service levy. It would be a little bit helpful on here if the debt service levy was shown as a separate line item, and it would show that levy going down and then the other levy going up. But they're combined on the notice. And so
Could I
you don't
speak to that as well?
Yeah.
We met yesterday, a group of us with the Taxpayer Association, some individuals from the Tax Commission, the county assessor, and a legislator, and walked through this process. In previous years, our line item there has been broken out in the line items that are subject to truth in taxation, which Mitch just mentioned. There's 3 of those. It would have been nice to have been able to show on this notice, as he just indicated. I just really want to reiterate that, because we might see some legislation to change that in the future to make that a little more clear for taxpayers. When one of those other levies is dropping and their reduction in taxes is shown there, and then obviously the offset for shifting that funding to another levy, that's obviously not very clear here, but that is something that could potentially be addressed in future legislation. So I think that was a good thing that came out of the meeting that we had yesterday with those individuals.
What this does show is that the 2020 tax rate that's on those far right columns is the tax rate actually goes down in 2021, the overall rate. As I mentioned before, you can appeal your property value. If the market value shown on your property valuation is higher than what you think your property is worth, then you should appeal to the County Board of Equalization. I think you have some forms available here, don't you?
Why, Mitch, I do, in fact. And we've shared information with individuals on the notification we sent out that hopefully better explain the situation. But for those of individuals here who need help with forms on appeals for their assessment, we've linked information on how they can do that with the county assessor's office. And if they're looking for tax relief programming information, I have that to share with them as well.
And that information is also available online. And again, the deadline for this property value appeal is September the 15th. There is statutory tax relief available as well for circuit breaker, which is based upon age and income, for indigent, which is 65 years old or disabled, for hardship, extreme financial hardship at any age, and for veterans, either veteran disability or those on active duty, and for the blind. And I'm not sure about the deadline on this one, but there is a deadline on this one as well. I don't know if you saw a deadline, Ben, but I know it's coming up. So, and with that, I would turn it back to the board for public comment.
Before we go into board discussion, we have a lot of people. I want to make sure to reiterate, this is a public hearing. We're going to invite those who have signed up. If you're in the audience and have not signed up, we invite you to real quick, because we want to hear from everybody who came to speak tonight. So you don't need to run. Ben will be out there waiting for you. And then as soon as Ben brings the list back in, we will just go in the order that you signed up. And we are happy to hear about that. We'll give people time to sign up. Just to preface this, obviously there's a lot going on today, especially with the county council meeting at 2 p.m. today regarding their decision on masks. Just a reminder that this hearing is for taxation, and we would hope that we can all stay on topic this evening as you share your thoughts with us. Each of you will be invited up for 3 minutes, and you can, Ben, do they need to tell us their name and address still? Ben, Rich,
Yes.
Yes, okay, so be sure to state your name and your address, and then you'll get your 3 minutes. So we will hang on just a minute till we get the list. Make sure, is everybody signed up who wants to be? All right. For those listening online, we're just waiting for Ben to get us the list. Okay, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 people signed up. Let's go ahead and start with Deborah Guttrell, and then Todd Barker. You'll follow her. We'll just list them a couple at a time so we don't get confused. So Deborah, you want to come up? Right, we're taking it from it. We will have time to discuss afterwards. Yes.
Thank you, Board. My name is Deborah Gatrell. I live and work in Granite School District. My address is 3809 South, 6800 West in West Valley City. I teach at Hunter High School, and I have occasion periodically to visit Cypress High School. I'm very grateful for the additional wing that was built out at Hunter High School. When we brought up the 9th grade, we had a Relo Village out back. There were 14 portable buildings. It was incredible. We got it to work, but that was a lot of moving people, especially in the winter with the snow and ice. So we're very grateful that the board saw fit to go ahead and add that wing. Cypress is the sinking ship of Granite School District, and so I'm very grateful to see that school being rebuilt. The new Granger High School is beautiful and was badly needed. If there had been an earthquake before it was rebuilt, my geologist uncle tells me that would have pancaked and we would have seen significant casualties. So I appreciate the board's foresight in making this plan in advance and consistency in following this plan. I approve this tax increase, which is really just a shift. So we're going to continue to pay what we're already paying to take care of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah, I mispronounced your last name. I apologize.
Yes, it's Gatrell.
Gatrell, not Guttrell. I'll get it right next time, Deborah. All right, Todd, if you want to come up, and after Todd, we have Kim Pearson on deck. Okay.
I didn't know I was going to talk in front of 12 people tonight. So anyway, my name's Todd Barker. I live in Holiday, Murray, Salt Lake County. I thought it was Murray when I moved up here from St. George. I was born and bred in Holiday. So when I came back, I wanted to live in the area. But when I went to Murray City and said, you know, I'm living in Waterbury at 5600 South, right next to Contwood High School on 13th East. I've only been there a year now, and my property taxes have jumped $600 for a 1,000 square foot unit that was built in 1973. It is wood and stucco. And so I kind of, in 1 year, have a $600 jump is, you know, kind of crazy to me. I thought, and this is off the subject a little bit, I thought Contwood High School, I went to Contwood High School, I graduated in Contwood High School, 1977. A couple of years ago, I heard that there weren't that many students going there anymore. It was going to be a Salt Lake Community College work into that. But anyway, if there's a form I need to fill out and gripe my problems onto that and then do something else, this is my primary property. And so, but for 1,000 square feet that was built in 1973, that you can tell it was built in 1973, to have it go up to, I'm sorry, I don't have that number, $2,200, maybe a little bit, $2,300. That seems a little steep for me, or to me. And so that's why I'm here tonight. So.
We appreciate you being here. Thank you, Todd. Kim and Gil, do you want to come up together? Okay, all right. This is Kim and Gil Pearson.
I'm Kim, and we live at 5091 South, 2365 West in Taylorsville. We've been there for 45 years. And the taxes, I'm with you. I don't know what his name was.
Todd.
Todd. With you, Todd. Our neighborhood, we've checked with them. Their taxes only went up between $60 and $100. Ours went up $211. $211, and we haven't made any changes. They've put in rocks and landscape. We were lucky to have pocket change. No, we haven't done those things. And I don't know what differentiates whose taxes go up in the neighborhood and whose don't. So we are on that list of things. The only things we aren't is a veteran. We're 65 and older. I'm blind. What else was it? I don't know. But veteran was the only thing we didn't apply for. So kind of clue me in on that. Guess it's your turn.
Okay, I'm Gil Pearson. Like she said, she's lost her eyesight. She's pronounced legally blind, even though she can see a little bit. But I couldn't figure out why, as we live and our parents pay taxes for the schools, for us when we went to school, then we pay taxes when we have our kids to school, and now we're still upping taxes, paying taxes, and we're retired. And we don't have any children living home anymore, and it's squeezing the heck out of us, you know? How do we keep paying our taxes? We have nothing else that we can bring in to pay the taxes. We're held at a certain, what you say, your Social Security. How do we continue to pay higher taxes when every time it goes up $211 for us? We're going to squeeze us out of our home and everything. I don't know how we can do it any better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have, I believe, I'm sorry, I'm horrible at reading, M. Kimball. Did I get that right? Okay, welcome. Come on up.
I live in Mill Creek, about 3575 south and 1825 east.
And remind us of your name?
Molly Kimball.
Molly, okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
I have a very unique house. It's a small home, and it was built in 1955. The architect is quite well known, and he studied under Mies van der Rohe, which is all glass and steel homes and buildings. And he came home, he had no money, and he came home and asked his mother if he could build a home for her. So he built this home that is steel and glass, one bedroom, one bath, kitchen, living room, and one carport. And I was very lucky to find the house, and it's on a wonderful piece of property. And it's gone up in value, and the Heritage Foundation, the Utah Heritage Foundation's been interested in the home. because it's a very unique home of his. And I've studied that a little bit because you can't change the home very much if they put it on the Heritage Foundation. I did not want to change the home, and I think it's important enough to have kept the home as he has done it. And so I ended up going ahead and putting it on the foundation. Well, then they sent it to National, and it was accepted, so it's on the National Heritage Foundation. And there are a lot of people that would like the home. The value has certainly gone up, but so have my taxes. And as they talked about it, you know, you're on a fixed income when you're retired. And so mine went up, I think, about $1,600 this year. And so that's why I'm here. I don't know if there's anything that the Heritage Foundation has anything to do with that, because I think the value of the home, well, all homes are going up, but the value of this one is very strong because of the design. So that's why I'm here. I don't know if I got any answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next on my sign-up list, I have John Duran. Come on up.
This is my first time here.
Welcome.
I live in Kearns, been there 18 years. We're paying in taxes $2,163. I'm disabled. I'm on disability. I make $1,200 a month. Now, my wife does make more money than me. She makes about $3,200 a month. But I got an issue. I start looking at your guys' the people that make it, the superintendents. The 10 top superintendents, the people that work for district, make more money a year than my house is worth, worth my house. We're talking $200,000, $300,000 a year. But yet you're going to tax me? It's got to stop. Oh, one more thing. Why is it that the schools on the west side of the district had lower scores, lower than 50%, and 95% of the students or east school districts had a 70% more in math and reading proficiencies? Why is that? Because there's more minorities on the west side? I don't understand that. I bet you all those superintendents live way up there, right? No more taxes this year. Maybe you need to be sued. A class action, minority lawsuit against you guys. I'm dead serious. I'm a paralegal. I've studied law for over 30 years. You guys got to stop taxing us, okay, please? Listen to these guys. What's going on? If we don't lose our jobs because of this COVID stuff, what's going to happen is we're not going to be able to pay our taxes on our houses. So we're going to have to get rid of the houses. Where are we going to live? The apartments are $1,200, $1,500 a month. Stop on the taxes. Maybe you need to be sued. Maybe you need to be individually sued. Maybe we need to put liens on your homes. And then we'll let your attorneys, that out of your pockets, pay to get it off. Enough with the taxes. Have a good day. I'm telling you, $330,000 a year? Thank you.
All right, thank you, John. I think this is Elizabeth Wolf. Is that right? I can't read this. The last name is Wall? W-O. Yeah. You want to come up? Sorry. Is it Tariq? What's your first name?
My writing is hard.
Oh, you're good. My reading's worse, so it's okay.
I think I put Thomas, or maybe I put Tom.
Oh, I can see Thomas. Okay, yep.
Okay, because that's what my taxes,
Okay, got it.
the taxes have.
All right, if you'll just state your name and your address, that'd be great.
Yeah, my name is Thomas Wall, as far as the county is concerned, and I live at 1254 East Ponderay Circle in Mill Creek. which used to be the county, and that's why I'm here. So I'm part of the Granite School District. I'm retired on Social Security. I don't have any kids or I don't have any grandkids, but I don't have anybody associated with me in a Granite School District. But, you know, I find this a very strange meeting in that I was expecting in other meetings I've gone to, the fire department meeting, the police meeting, I expect to see a display of the total budget, not playing around with fuzzy math, which we're talking about, what do they call that, rates? That just doesn't make any sense to me. I want to see this is what you spent last year, this is what you intend to spend next year. So I can understand where you're coming from, but I don't. I would like to see a line item of what the budget is all about, and then from there we can start using the scissors and start clipping at things that we don't need. And I'm sure there's lots of discretionary items that could be cut out, and maybe some people in here that might speak might be able to identify those and see what we can do, because that's what we have to do, all of us, every day when we get up. We especially with inflation, we have to live within a budget. Well, I haven't seen anything about a budget on the board here, so we have a benchmark where we can go and start cutting things out. You brought up some things about, well, you can appeal or you can go on welfare. I can't appeal on my house because the house down the street, which was a dump, went for $600,000, and this is all about inflation. And why are we allowing the district, the police department, the fire department to experience a windfall profit? Because that's what this is. But it's not a profit for us. Our money just doesn't go as far. I would like to just close by saying that, I challenge you to put something up there. I don't know if you use PowerPoint or whatever, but put something up there that shows this is our line item of budget items that we deal with, so much for teachers, so much for buses, so much for schools, and so on. And then we can see where we can make some cuts and, try to run the school district like a business. That's what Ronald Reagan did in California, and it shaved a lot off the budget. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming tonight. All right, we have Ella Manzul. I'm sure I did not say that right, but come on up.
My name's Ella Manzuk, and this is the third time I complained. And the reason I'm asking you to listen is
could I
because...
ask you to pull the microphone closer to you?
You can't hear me?
That's much better,
okay.
Yes.
My unit is 760 square feet. And I've been there for 33 years, and you've almost tripled my taxes. And I think you should base it on the size of the unit and not for how much you can sell it for. And that's my pet peeve. And I'm not going to stop until I get some change, because this is ridiculous. It's gone up $500 the last 3 years. So I would like for you to consider checking the square feet of the units and going by the square feet. It hasn't got any bigger in 33 years, but you charge over and over your taxes to death. And people are living in the streets. It's awful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. All right, our final one, I think we have Tamara Hell. Tammy? Tammy. Tammy, okay. Come on over. Thank you for being here tonight.
I was a little late. I'm directionally challenged. I live at 3516 West, 5700 South, Taylorsville.
If you could scoot really close to the microphone, we're having trouble hearing you from here.
I live at 3516 West, 5700 South in Taylorsville, and I am just was shocked when I saw my property tax for Granite School District. They want to increase the tax by 27%, which is $168.57 for me. I'm going, what's up? And I know I missed a little bit of the meeting, so I'm not sure if there was an explanation. I mean, the kids aren't even going to school. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. Help! I mean, this is my first year being retired, and I'm going, I don't think I can do this if it keeps going up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that brings our public comment portion of this hearing to an end. Now we will open it up for board discussion. Anybody want to go first? Nicole.
I'm always happy to go first. So you kind of touched on this, Ben, but I just wanted to, because I know you talked to the county assessor. So there's a couple questions. Why are some, it feels like we have a lot of people from Taylorsville and Holiday, it seems like. Why are there, Mill Creek, why are there, it seems like some people who feel like they're harder hit this year, especially than others?
There was actually a number of good questions that were presented and we discussed yesterday with the county assessor. To be clear, that you obviously do not have the ability as a Board of Education to determine people's assessed value or the value of their home or dictate how that assessment is determined or how much tax is collected based on size or value. I thought the points were made were excellent. There are some challenges for those individuals on fixed incomes or live in a home for an extended period of time and only get the reaped value of that increased value when the home is sold at the end of the day. And unfortunately, as a district, that's well out of your purview, and the legislature determines how that property tax is set. The assessor does determine, to your question, which area of focus receives greater amount of attention in any given year. If you can imagine, the county assessor staff is limited. They can't go through the several 100,000 residents of Salt Lake County and determine an exact valuation for every home every year. And so what happens is, based on market conditions, inflation, and other things that were brought up, there's some general increases. The assessor pointed out that they hyper-focus on a general area, Taylorsville being one of those this last year, where they really try to hone in and determine values based on recent home sales and other factors in the market. You can imagine in this current market, as was brought up, homes are going for an ever-increasing value due to decline in stock, right? As there's less of of something, the price and the value goes up, despite the fact that it hasn't gotten bigger, as was appropriately pointed out. And so that's a challenge, but unfortunately it is outside of our purview on assessing those values. We, as Mitch had pointed out, simply get assigned a rate based on the amount of money that we collect in any given year. And if your value has gone up and we're collecting the same amount of rate, you're going to be paying more of that portion as a collected assessed value for the entire county, if that makes sense.
Now, to be clear, though, the rate, looking at it, the rate has gone down, but people are still paying more. That is due to directly to the assessed value, the market value going up.
Correct. So if any number of individuals, I bet 90% of them, I've been walking around the room, have their notice. And we obviously have the sample notices here. Look at Murray City or your local city. Look at one of those assessed values, one of those line items, and the rate from 2020 to the rate as proposed in 2021. My guess is the rate has gone down because your value has gone up, yet those entities are still collecting more revenue from each of those residents because the valuation, meaning the value of the home, has increased significantly this year.
And Terry?
Well, and thank you for each one of you coming tonight. We do appreciate that. We realize that we live in difficult times. It's a sacred responsibility we have as elected officials to have an impact on your taxes. I assure you we're doing all that we can to do as good a job as we can, and our employees are doing the same, that we can provide a great education and opportunity for the young people. Everyone that I heard tonight, and myself included, my value of my property went up, and that's had the most impact on how much we've had to pay in taxes. We really don't have any way to be able to set value for you. That's the assessor. But let me just assure you, we're doing all that we can to spend the money that we ask you to pay as best we can. We're doing everything we can. We all are taxpayers, and we have that impact on our lives too. But I certainly appreciate all that have come tonight, all your concerns. I've felt those same concerns and fears, but we'll continue to do all that we can to be able to provide the best education for young people. I don't have children in school, but I have grandchildren, and it just perpetuates. And that's the beauty of our public school system, is that we all do all that we can to provide the best education so that those young people coming up will be able to continue providing a great life for those who follow behind. But thank you for coming. I can't answer that, but Karen can talk to you if you want to address her. I wasn't trying to ignore you.
Just a minute, we've got a little feedback going on. That was you. For those listening online, just a minute, we're working on it.
Said it, and it makes less sense now.
It's a delay, yeah.
Thank you.
Are we good? Yeah, it's.
I'm sorry you had to listen to me twice.
Can I go? Yep. All right. One of my thoughts. There's been a lot of good issues and points brought up today. I mean, some of the problem sitting on a local school board is some of these issues. It's not in our power to resolve. It's been brought up. We don't get to assess that, but. I wonder if, meeting with the county assessor, this, I think, Marie, or you're walking out, but I think that Molly Marie, situations like that where it's a different, value, that my recommendation would be try to get with the county assessor. that's who has the power to look into that a little bit deeper. She talked about that preservation program. When there's those levels of things, a local school board's not going to know how those are assessed on a tax notice. Terry, did you have a comment?
Covered the bill date. The deadline is September 15th, 2021. You need to go to the Salt Lake County Assessor's Office or send something in, and that's on State Street and
21st South.
21st
And I have the forms here, and I'm happy to walk anybody through that process.
But everyone that I listen to, the majority of you need to appeal your value to the county assessor. Sometimes they change value, sometimes they don't, but that's what I saw in everything that I heard tonight.
Yeah.
And that's on that, and Ben has all that information for you.
All right, Clark.
I thought it might be appropriate to answer one question that was raised as to our budget, our annual budget of the school board. That is published online at our school district's website. It was published as of June 15th, Mitch, for the 2021-2022 school year. Past budgets are there and available, and you can email any of us from the board, and we'd be happy to direct you very precisely to that link where that information is available.
And as a follow-up to that, we have, in June, we actually are required to have a budget hearing. And so June is the month where we go through every detailed, that's, some people mentioned tonight, I'd like to see the budget. We do. We have the PowerPoint, we have the presentation to go through and show you what percentage. Just for example, 89% of our budget is spent on people because we're in the people business and it takes people to run our district, teachers in classrooms, principals in buildings. So, but those details, Clark's right, that is published on the district website, but just for future notice, we always have our budget hearing is always in the June board meeting. And it's pretty comprehensive overview of our budget going forward. Connie.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that before, years ago, Granite District was a pay-as-you-go district. That meant if we didn't have the money in the capital outlay, we couldn't build anything or repair a big, we couldn't remodel or anything. In 2009, we did pass a bond that said, let's get started on so we could build buildings easier. But that included the bond and the interest rate. So now what we're trying to do is to get the interest rate on those bonds down so that we can become a pay-as-you-go again with our money. And so this is what started this year. The debt interest is coming down from that 2009. And so we're taking that money, putting it back into the capital fund so that down the road, we will have enough money to become a pay-as-you-go district again. Otherwise, we'll be forever paying interest and not putting the money into the capital. I think it's well worth. I mean, it was a hard decision when we made it years ago and we decided to start bonding and do another bond, but it got us going. It got us so that we could repair buildings. We could build new buildings. And so I just wanted to mention that with the simplicity that I have to have the tax notice and for me to understand what we're trying to do as a district.
I just wanted to express some heartfelt thanks for you, that you came and spoke to us, because this is my first tax hearing, and your stories impacted me. And it's important, though I take that role very seriously, when I think about these issues, I think about your faces. And so it's such a big deal that you showed up. And I think it would be scary to come and speak. So I appreciate that you have advocated for yourselves today. And I also wanted to say that it's really an interesting thing. You live your own life and you see how your own things work. And you try to imagine how things are working for other people, but it's not unless people are willing to let you in and hear the story that you really get it. And so your stories are really important, and I appreciate that you shared them today. I hope that I know that they will influence my decision-making in the future, so thanks.
Any other comment? All right, with that, we have 2 recommended actions tonight. And so if we are good to go forward, I will entertain a motion for the first one to adopt the 2022 budget as published.
I move that we adopt the 2022 budget as it published now.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to adopt the 2022 budget as published. Any further discussion or questions from the board? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. The second recommended action is to set the tax rate to be 0.007105.
I'll make a motion that we set the tax rate to be 0.007105.
I'll second. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to set the tax rate to be 0.007105. Any further discussion or questions from the board? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Also passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Mitch, for being our numbers guy, Ben, for your help, and once again, for everyone who came out this evening. We truly, truly appreciate your willingness to be here and share your stories, as Julie mentioned. All right, we're going to call for a 10-minute recess before proceeding with the remainder of our agenda. So the time is 6:57. Let's resume at 7:10. 7:10. It's actually 7:11. Hey, Ben. Ben. All right, we're going to ask our board members to make their way back up. Ben, would you be willing to go out and meet with, he's like the most popular guy in town, just so, you know. All right, thanks, Ben. Okay, we're back from recess, and just as a reminder, our meeting is ongoing. We did close out we'll close out our tax hearing and move forward with the rest of our agenda. Today is Thursday, August 12th, 2021. Even though we're already in meeting, we'll go ahead and state who is here, starting with Clark.
Clark Nelson.
Chris Wynn.
Karen Winder.
Nicole McDermott.
Connie Burgess.
Julie Jackson.
Terry Bodden.
David Garrett.
Rich Nye.
All right, we are going to begin our evening with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Rick Anthony.
Audience, if you'd please rise and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks, Rick. For the reverence tonight, I'm going to just give a small thought. There's kind of a common saying out there that says a person who feels appreciated will always do more than what is expected. And this has really been on my mind today as I woke up to a positive email from one of our teachers, and it really sticks out because we don't get a lot of positive, happy emails in general. We get a lot of people who, you know, are concerned and upset or frustrated with something, which is fine. We are public servants, and we're here to help them through that. But it is still nice to hear some of those happy emails. This teacher, it was a simple message, probably took her less than a few minutes to type out, and it was just basically thanking our entire board for providing all of the meals this week, having them catered at each individual school, and she just said how grateful she was that the board would allocate the funds, and also just the organization behind it, and it was actually quality food, and she was just grateful that it was one less thing in the first week back to school and kind of all the crazy things that happened to our teachers in that first week, one less thing that she had to worry about. So I wanted to, it just brought it was a simple paragraph, but it made me think about how important gratitude is. And, it really, we need more of that. We need to make sure that we're modeling that as board members and as district employees and really in any capacity, because kids don't just go to school for reading, writing, arithmetic. They pick up on these behaviors, and who are their role models? The adults in the building in the variety of capacities. And so I would just hope that we can maybe do a little better and make a few more goals to really seek out, when we seek out opportunities for things, they come when we're actively thinking about them, right? And so I would just challenge us all to be willing to look for opportunities to thank those around you with it could be a sincere compliment. It could be, hey, you rocked that lesson today, or wow, these lunches taste awesome, or thanks for driving the bus. All these models can be repeated, the model behavior. And I just want to start out by saying at the beginning of the school year how thankful we are for everybody in their capacity as we're all working and clawing to get everything prepared and ready for Monday, the beginning of school. And so I just think sharing with people that they matter and that we all matter and we care that you're here. If teachers if students can hear that they matter and teachers notice they're in their seats willing to learn, if our teachers can feel appreciated for being in the classroom, being prepared, doing their awesome lesson plans, loading things online, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, I know. But it's important that people know that they matter, and it's important to show that appreciation, because very small and simple things can bring about the biggest results. And so I just challenge everyone listening and all of us here at Granite to have a little bit that in mind as we begin the new school year. Look for those sweet opportunities to give a little thank you, give a kind word, and show people by you that work with you and that you're there working for and working with, that they matter to you. So just a little message on how important gratitude is going forward. All right, so next on our agenda, we have our patron participation time, but I don't have Ben. So, Rick, can you go get the list? I know we have 3 people signed up for public comment, and I know you're here, and I see you, but let me go in the order that you're signed up. So if you'll give me a second. While we're waiting for the list, just a few reminders. Every citizen that comes up here and to share a comment, just remember to share your name and your address. Thank you, Rich. And then you can have your 3 minutes to address us with whatever topic you're here to speak about. We have Lisa Sudweeks here. Where's Lisa? Oh, there you are. And so she'll be first, Katie Bockham, and then Logan Hauenstein. Ooh, did I get that close? Okay, perfect. All right. All right, Lisa, you're first. Come on up.
I was told 5 minutes. Is it 5 or 3? I might have to
you
cut
can
some
do
stuff.
5.
Okay.
Because you know what? I was probably wrong.
Okay.
I should have said 5. Sorry about
All right, thank
we
you.
had a tax hearing, and that's where it was 3, so I'm just confused.
Yeah, well, it's obviously been a long night. Lisa Sudweeks. I live at 3246 Royalwood Drive in Taylorsville. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to let me talk to you tonight about critical race theory. I will preface my remarks by stating that I know that this body is not necessarily responsible for curriculum for our children or for the content of our teachers' personal development, or professional development, I'm sorry. I also know that, like me, you all have children or grandchildren in this district and therefore have a vested interest in the success of our neighborhood schools. I've also been following the USBE Rule R227 about educational equity and critical race theory in Utah schools. I've reached out to the state school board members on multiple occasions as well. That being said, you are here. You live and raise your families in this community. Those of us who voted for you did so because we believe that you would fight as hard as we would to safeguard our children, to help them be successful, and to not intentionally handicap them. With that in mind, I would like to express the growing anxiety and some indignation that many of us have felt as we see CRT rear its head and creep further and further into our children's lives. First, it is disingenuous for anyone to proclaim that critical race theory is not being taught in our schools. CRT is not a subject like language arts or math. CRT is a filter through which all subjects are taught. It would not be possible to know if it was in our child's classroom unless we were observing lesson presentation every day. Critical race theory comes into our classrooms through teacher trainings. It is then the teacher's responsibility to infuse the lesson material with the CRT worldview. I've read accounts this summer of Utah teachers at professional development courses being taught how to infuse their lessons with the power struggles and guilt of CRT. Thankfully, the accounts I have read are from teachers horrified at the suggestion that they train their students in the ways of radical race and gender theory. But how many are excited to implement this worldview? Second, critical race theory seeks to divide and immediately assign motives and value based solely on skin color. The only logical endpoint is division, mistrust, and hatred. By its very nature, it cannot be constructive because it does not seek the best in people. It points out only the flaws and attributes those flaws to race. The oppressed cannot be responsible for their choices, and the oppressors cannot have any virtue. Next, it would not be within the purview of anyone within the walls of our schools to assign our children worth. No one my kids ever interact with has the right to teach my black son that he is less than, victimized, and incapable because of his skin color. No one ever has the right to teach my white son that he is evil, unworthy, or guilty because of his skin color. Our children are individuals. Their skin color is just one of the things that makes them who they are. No one has the right to boil them down to race and race alone. I am so very thankful for all the wonderful Granite teachers, admins, and staff that have made all of my boys feel safe and capable. However, I am not naive enough to think that our district has been unaffected by CRT or that we will remain immune from its divisive teachings. And so lastly, I have a promise and a prediction. I promise that if this hateful worldview is not rooted out and never permitted within our schools, regardless of any state or national rules, my 4 children will no longer be attending these schools. And if I have to pull my children out, I will also be pulling out the hundreds and hundreds of hours of my life spent volunteering on PTA boards, school community councils, classroom support, and network commitments. I predict that there will be many like me who seek to protect their children from this type of hate and hopelessness. Instead of investing in our school communities at large, we will spend our time and energy educating our children ourselves. They will learn all the subjects that are necessary for a successful life. They will also learn to love their neighbors and work together with them to bring good into the world, regardless of those neighbors' skin color. You are here. I believe you care for my children. You care for your children, and I believe you care for all of the children in this district. I know there is something that can be done to protect our children, to help them excel to the best of their abilities, to overcome the hard things in life and be better for them. They will keep growing and they will be adults sooner than we realize. What kind of adults are we trying to encourage? Divided, full of resentment and guilt, who firmly believe that the world is out to get them? Or adults who know the failings and the goodness of mankind, who know how to work through hard things and be responsible for their own actions. Critical race theory would like us to raise the former, but I believe most of us would like to raise the latter. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Katie. Remember, it's 5 minutes, not 3 minutes. That was my error.
I may have panicked a little bit when I heard the 3 minutes. Good evening, board members, Dr. Nye. I'm Katie Bauckham. I live on Immigration Canyon Road. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight about something that is not on the agenda, but is of the utmost importance to myself and to many citizens in Granite School District. My husband and I have a young child, Jackson. He will be attending Eastwood starting in 2022. He's not quite there yet. I'm an educator. I'm in a public institution. I was raised by a mother who was an educator in a public institution in Austin, Texas, where I grew up. I'm proud to say that I am a product of the Austin Independent School District, which is one of a number of school districts across the country that have recently made the courageous decision to step up, to do what's right, and what's clearly in the best interest of the children they educate and the broader community. In the face of dangerous political posturing, they are requiring masks in schools. I'm grateful to be here on behalf of my family, as well as thousands of other families in Salt Lake County, including hundreds in Granite School District. I believe that knowledge is power. My Austin ISD education taught me that, and also taught me to follow science. Public health experts across organizations are clear about the need for layered prevention strategies in K through 12 schools that include face coverings, among other things. As you know, I'm sure, a few hours ago, the Salt Lake County Council overturned Dr. Angela Dunn's order to mandate masks in Utah students under 12, a group that is 100% unvaccinated. This is a failure of the most basic responsibility of keeping our community members safe. There are huge potential direct and indirect effects of COVID in schools. Of course, children becoming ill, high-risk family members becoming ill, Hospitalizations and deaths are absolutely a concern, but we don't know what the long-term impact of COVID will be on anyone, including children. There are financial and employment effects on parents who would then need to stay home and take care of sick children or do homeschooling. This also has a disproportionate impact on women. There are social and educational impacts of repeated classroom or school closures. And then finally, there is a real hospital capacity issue. I corresponded with Beth, who is a school district parent and an ICU physician. She indicated she has been receiving calls from Texas, Oregon, and Oklahoma looking for the closest available beds. This is the closest place there might be one available. We will all be adversely impacted by removing a layer of COVID prevention, some of us more than others. A few examples of people in the Granite School District area that I spoke with today. Kala, you'll be hearing from her dad, Logan, next. A 10-year-old girl who is a 2-time cancer survivor. Kala and this other young girl deserve the safe, in-person education that they've just gotten a glimpse of in their lives. The 6 grandchildren of Christine Maybe, who are in Granite School District. There's also 5 more in Salt Lake School District, by the way. Christine has leukemia. She's high risk. Her grandchildren deserve to spend time with her with a little bit less fear, and she deserves that too. Timmy, Ellie, Milo, Enzo, Daphne, Danny, several siblings at Calvin Smith, all these students will have to wait longer for in-person learning in order to protect vulnerable people in their homes. They're going to miss out on dual language immersion, leadership experiences, programs that are not offered online. What are working parents to do? No one should be allowed to enter a public school without a mask, just as no one is allowed to drink and drive, smoke inside a public building, or assault someone. Just as many classrooms limit allergens, like nuts, to protect even just one child. It is critical that anyone entering a Granite School District school be wearing a mask. I want to beg you, the Granite School Board, to step up and do what's right. In the face of dangerous political posturing, I beg you to protect our children and our broader community by requiring masks in Granite School District schools. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Katie. Let's see. Logan, you're already on the way there. Just a reminder to state your name and your address, and then you'll get your 5 minutes after that.
You got it. All right, can you hear me all right? My name is Logan Howenstein. I'm from Mill Creek at Kaibab Circle. And I'd like to say thanks for giving me some time to talk today. I'd like to, like Katie, talk about our students' health. Today, our short-sighted county council members terminated the mask order, ignoring the advice of Board Health, CDC, FDA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the LDS Church, and countless experts and organizations. They decided that the immune-compromised deserve second-class treatment, and that the projected number of preventable infections, hospitalizations, and deaths are acceptable. Unfortunately, their decision has a huge impact on my family. I have 2 kids at Eastwood Elementary, also as it turns out. My daughter Kala is going into 2nd grade. My son Tatum is going into 4th. Kala was born with SCID, that's the bubble boy disease. So she was born without a functional immune system. She has had a hard life, but you wouldn't know it when you hear her laugh. Our family has been in isolation since her birth. And after multiple procedures, she now has a functional immune system. She now has the privilege to get a vaccine. In 2019, she entered kindergarten, and suddenly her world opened up. She made friends her own age for the very first time in kindergarten. And then the pandemic hit. In 2020, we opted for virtual learning, and it was tough. Our teachers did an awesome job under the circumstances, but in the end, it was clear that virtual learning was not ideal. In spring, the COVID numbers went down and everyone was still masked, so we decided that we would send our kids back to school in person for the last quarter of school. This year, though, we're out of luck. Without the K-6 universal masking or a vaccine, the schools can't provide a safe environment for Kala, and we can't risk sending her brother in person either. Virtual learning was hard for both kids and for both of us parents, but homeschool is a substantial burden as well, so what do we do this year? My family is stuck until they approve the vaccine. So, in the meantime, I know you all don't have the power to overturn what the Salt Lake Council has done, but I urge you all to continue to push for a layered approach to protecting our K-6 kids. In particular, could you please reach out to your teachers, staff, and students to help them understand one vitally important concept? Your mask protects the people around you. Listening to the Salt Lake County Council public comments the other day, one thing was very clear. Many folks believe that the only reason to wear a mask is to protect yourself. Here's the thing though, it's not the main reason you should wear a mask. Your mask protects the people around you. Your mask minimizes the number of respiratory droplets that you breathe into the world. And as such, wearing a mask isn't a personal decision, it's a societal decision. Without a mask, you endanger the people around you. And choosing not to wear a mask during a pandemic is like choosing to ignore traffic signals. Sure, if you ignore red lights, you might hurt or kill yourself, but chances are really good you're going to hurt or kill someone else. Teach our students that wearing a mask is an act of compassion and respect. Teach them that your mask protects your friends, your teachers, and your family. And of course, please continue to follow CDC's guidelines carefully. And when the vaccine comes, please strongly encourage your students to get vaccinated. And beyond that, I know a number of school districts across the country are defying their mask mandate bans, as Katie mentioned. Districts in Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Phoenix, and several Florida counties. I know that that's a drastic move to make, but as COVID numbers inevitably rise over the next few weeks, please explore all avenues available to you to help keep our kids safe. And know that any courageous actions that you take will be backed by many, many concerned parents and citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Logan. Thank you for those public comments. You spoke very well, very good messages, and we appreciate you being here, taking the time. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, I'm sorry, I thought Rich was going to say something. All right, you're good. Okay, we're going to move on. The next section of our agenda is the consent agenda. We've actually had this for almost a week. And so with that, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Right, we have a motion and a second on the table to accept the consent agenda. Any questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Yes.
Is that you?
Yes.
All right, we'll turn the time over to Dave, because in that consent agenda item, there is an appointment, an administrative appointment. And Dave, we turn the time over to you.
Board members, in the interest of time, I'm going to stay at this table. But before I start, I'd like to pay tribute to Mitch Robinson. Mitch has decided to retire from the district. After, 32 years, Mitch was working with the budget, living with those numbers and formulas every day. It's just amazing. Mitch has kept us out of the red for all of those years and just done a great job. So I did that for a few years. I know how it is. It's a lot of work and a lot of weekends. So, Mitch, we appreciate that. We've been fortunate in finding a replacement for Mitch. I think you're here until, the middle of October? So there'll be some overlap. The person we'd like to introduce to you is Brian Ibsen. Brian, if you'd stand up. Brian is a graduate of a large college down south.
Can you clarify, please?
Blue.
We can't say bad words in board meeting.
He has a master's degree.
We'll speak after then, Nicole.
Master's degree in accounting and is a CPA. He's worked for the Utah State Auditor's Office as an auditor. He's worked at the Utah State Board of Education as an auditor, also as a financial manager and an analyst. And then the last 5 years he's spent working for Granite. He's been the assistant in the county department. So we're very fortunate to have a man with this kind of experience to take Mitch's place. So,
Congratulations.
We asked him to bring his family, but they all had prior commitments, right? Yes. Okay.
Well,
All right.
I got to get to it. Yeah, there you go.
So that'll be a fun-
Welcome, Brian and Mitch from the whole board. We've really enjoyed always being able to pick up the phone and have you answer those hard questions of rates and taxes and all those things. And so,
thank you so much, Mitch.
We truly appreciate you, and we're happy you're here through October. So, there you go. There you go. Yeah, and beyond, right?
He wanted to do one more budget hearing. I know he was waiting for that.
That's right. That's right.
Brian, that'll be effective tomorrow, so you'll officially start. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Yeah, seriously, why you can. Thanks, guys. All right, next on our agenda, we have two first readings, the first of which is to address our district community council policy. This discussion is going to be led by Ben Horsley.
Sorry, let me pull this up here again. I was trying to open up the superintendent's report before we got to that far in the meeting, but we're going to have to wait on that for a second. So Doug is also on the line. Doug, are you there? Can you hear us, Doug? Well, hopefully he'll join us soon. So just to kind of go through this very briefly and give you a little... You there, Doug? Very good. Feel free to chime in as appropriate. Sorry if we interrupted your nap.
This morning he was on a canoe when I called him, or a kayak or something.
Well, you must be tired then. Thanks for joining us, Doug. Just to give a little bit of context and history to the District Community Council before we talk about these proposed revisions. When I first joined the school district almost 13 years ago, I worked for Dr. Ron Camp. And this was at the forefront when school community councils really first came into fashion, as it were. And as part of that process, we did not, as a school district, initiate in many public engagement processes as many as we do today. For instance, we didn't do town hall meetings with the superintendent. We didn't do superintendent snapshots. There were other opportunities to engage with the board and with senior district leadership on a regular basis. It was just board meetings. And so as part of that process, prior to my coming, they had initiated this policy to provide an opportunity for two network members. Each of the respective networks would elect individuals to serve on a district-wide community council, and that would be kind of a body that they would be able to bounce ideas off of and to get public input and feedback on a regular basis from people who are obviously engaged within their schools in and of themselves. With the hiring of Superintendent Bates, we obviously enhanced dramatically some of those other opportunities. And now as we look to this fall with the hiring of Superintendent Nye, we're even enhancing those further. And it seemed like an appropriate time to revisit this policy and see if this was the best way or if this could be enhanced in some way to give us a little bit more bang for our buck in terms of engagement. And so that is kind of the context and history of this. It seems a simplification and an audit of the efficacy of this particular policy was appropriate. And so here we are today. This is actually a really a simplified revision, but I'm going to go through what we put together and proposed. And then I had a chance to visit with a number of you. I think I spoke with Clark on the phone about this. I spoke with board leadership, and I also spoke with Julie today. And what was that, yesterday? I can't remember what day it is. So it was this week. We spoke at length about this policy, and I appreciate the feedback that we've received thus far. So I'm hoping to summarize that rather quickly for you. The membership and function, it seems appropriate. We've seen people really engage with the district community council for about a year, and then they kind of taper off a little bit. And there's probably a variety of reasons for that. And it might be the way that we're structuring the meetings and the engagement. That's certainly something we can look into. We have been meeting traditionally about 4 to 5 times a year, but those are offsetting terms. So, and it is a 2-year term. So we generally see that one member of the council who's really engaged for that 1 year, and then we get a new member, and that we lose about half of we're only getting on average about half of our participation at this point in time. So whether that's based on the model or how the meetings are structured, that's certainly a conversation we should have. We got rid of, as you can see in the revisions, the proposed revisions, the onerous elections process. If you can imagine trying to run school community council elections with the set deadlines as part of the state requirements that are codified there, those can't take place until after Labor Day and have to be completed by September 20th. And then we're trying to turn around and do another district community council member election, because that is the body that actually elects those representatives to the district community council within that short 2-week time frame. So that actually, I think, it hinders our ability to get quality engagement and quality candidates who are willing to participate in this process because it is such a rushed and onerous process. We also wanted to enhance the opportunities for people to be involved with this body and to, again, increase the level of engagement and the feedback that you're receiving and that we're receiving as senior staff. So we didn't want to codify within this the structure of those meetings. That's certainly something we should look at, but we want to be able to have the flexibility to adjust those meetings to enhance that engagement. If you can imagine, based on the current membership as we're proposing, we were suggesting that all parent members be members of the district community council. That's roughly 300 to 400 parents district-wide. And the idea is that we would continue to have the same amount of meetings roughly that we're having, 4 to 5, move those around regionally, and again, solicit agenda items or requests for information, however we want to structure those meetings. To get that feedback that we're looking for. But you would imagine that maybe if 100 people showed up, that's still a large amount of people participating in a meeting. From the feedback that I heard from a number of you is we like the engagement and the other individuals from networks hearing the engagement from other networks as well, that's valuable to see things from a 30,000-foot perspective instead of really in the weeds of your own individual school community and network, because we do serve a diverse array of communities within Granite School Districts. So that is certainly something we thought would be an enhancement by having that many people involved. That being said, I did get a recommendation that perhaps we just designate the school community council chairs, who are required to be parents under statute, to be automatic members of the district community council. That would limit that group a little bit more, but to another comment that I received from Clark is we certainly don't, while we would hone in and specifically invite those individuals to participate as members of the council, we certainly wouldn't restrict other parents who wanted to participate in those meetings from coming and attending as well. So that's kind of some thoughts and feedback there. I wanted to go to section, it's now section B on the what used to be the functions of the district community council. There was a piece there that limited the amount of meetings, and the idea was behind that we would at least on a regular basis have 2 meetings annually, but we could have more as required, as appropriate, and we could also pull back if we are in the process. If you can imagine, we've gone through a number of major issues within this district where we go solicit feedback. Reconfiguration is one of those, school closures and consolidations. Sorry, I said the closure word, I meant consolidation. A lot of engagement on those boundary changes. And so there might be a year where we know this Davis demographic stuff is coming down the road, where we already have preset meetings where we might curtail the number of district community council meetings, because we know we're having that engagement in other places. But the idea would generally be to have at least 4 annually, and that was one suggestion from Julie, is that we codify that we hold those meetings quarterly. I think with the advent of the technologies that we've enhanced and utilized during the pandemic, that I feel very comfortable with whatever number the board feels would be appropriate, comparable to what we've been doing in the past. Last but not least, we do have in section 2 of that section, it says we have produced the language specifically the district council shall provide advice and recommendations to the board on these certain matters. It's certainly not limited to those items, but as the feedback that I heard is it would be nice if those meetings, again, were structured to get more feedback and to hear more about things that are working, and more importantly, perhaps in some instances, things that aren't working, as opposed to having the same set agenda items that we seem to recycle through on a regular basis in the current format. So with that, I think I covered everybody's feedback. I did want to go back to, in speaking with Nicole, she mentioned on the purpose, on the initial piece, we have not altered this in any way, shape, or form, but to her, she made a good point that the second sentence says, furthermore, the legislature, this is in the first paragraph, has established school community councils as the mechanism whereby boards of education receive community input. That has certainly been the case in Granite School District. I think we utilize our school community councils to the highest degree than any other district in the state. That being said, it is not the only mechanism or the purpose by which these school community councils are established. I suggested perhaps we remove that whole paragraph and simply indicate that the Board of Education is committed, go straight to the second paragraph, to establishing a culture of collaboration, listening, responding to patrons, however we want to simplify that or clarify that purpose, to Julie's recommendation, which is to just simplify that purpose and make it really clear what DCC is all about. So with that, I know that was a little lengthy, but I appreciate you giving me a chance to go through the feedback that I had heard from board members.
All right, let's go to Connie, and then after Connie, I think Nicole has a comment. Am I right?
I just was going to say, my suggestion was or put mechanism.
All right.
Instead, so whatever.
All right, Connie.
I just really want to thank you for making the change. When we first started, I think it's very difficult when you have 2 people from a high school to filter down and tell others in the elementary what was going on and what happened in the meeting. And this way, the elementary people can come and feel a part of it, you know, so I really appreciate broadening this. I think it will be so much, more beneficial.
I agree. I think the intent and purpose originally was noble, but some people really embraced that role of representing their council or their network, I'm sorry, and others didn't see that vision quite as well.
And I agree with the election process. That originally, when we copied another district, they didn't have elections. It was just by invitation to come, and the elections really made it more difficult. Yeah, so it's good.
Chris.
I just want to say I really like this change. I think this is a really great step forward because I've served on community councils, and it is hard to get the word out to the other schools that you tend to stay at your school with the information sometimes. So I really like this change. I also had a question. Is any terms changing for this new change with the district community council? Would they stay elected?
So as their membership and function, the way it's written in this proposal is simply anybody who's elected in their regular school after the September 20th annual deadline is automatically a member.
So they don't have to have a separate.
Yeah, and so Julie mentioned that perhaps we streamline it just a little bit and hone it into just council chairs. I'm open to that too, and but at the same time, there's a notion of the more the merrier. We're going to have to look at how we structure those meetings to make sure that we get meaningful engagement, because we don't certainly want it to turn into a gripe session. We want it to be meaningful engagement, right? Two-way communication.
Perfect, thank you.
Well, and on that, can I just piggyback on that? The challenge I think that we face with a change like this is as much thought process and try to, get our little, crystal balls. There's a fine line of, you say, let's invite all of the councils. And I am grateful that it's just the local community elections and that we're not, district-wide. Just a side note, I'm grateful that that piece is going away. And then we can just basically say, all right, give us your list of your community council members. So I like that aspect of it. But this is tricky because you said, 300 to 400 is how many are elected district-wide on community council? Are those parents or are those parents and teachers?
That would be the parent on average. So an elementary and junior high is required to have at least 4 parent members. High school is required to have at least 6. So you can kind of do the math in your head, but you also probably recognize many of our councils do not function at the level that we would all hope they would. And so they're constantly looking for more parents to participate on a regular basis. And then some we have that are booming with, I went to Clark's on a regular basis for a while there, and they had a number of engaged parents on a regular basis, and that's awesome, but obviously it's not.
Yeah. So I think what I mean by my crystal ball is when we kind of break away from something that we've done for so many years and we're kind of reestablishing our policy, I think it's a great move forward overall. The tricky spot we're in is we don't know out of those 300-400 people if 100 people are going to show up or 50 or 350. And so right now, I just want to kind of advise that we can do our best thinking, but realize that this is going to take shape as we go. We're probably not going to be able to predict everything 100%. So let's do our best thinking and put something forward, and then we can always go back and, not let. One of my favorite sayings is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Let's get a good start on this, try to do our best thinking, and then revisit this in a year if we need to and tweak it, make some tweaks. And so just keep that I just wanted to mention that.
I love the idea of making sure that we understand that it can be fluid and that we can improve it whenever we want. I think that's fantastic. My thinking behind having the community council chairperson, not that this is a party that we're throwing, but when I send out an invitation, whoever wants to come over, you can come over. You'll get like a few people. But if you call someone and say, hey, will you come over? If someone has an invitation and they have a responsibility, now they come. And so my reasoning behind that is that when someone, it's their responsibility or it's their invitation and they're directly invited, I think we're more likely to have more representation. And our goal isn't necessarily, we don't do this so that patrons feel good. We do this because it helps us make great policy and helps us make great schools. And we do it together, right? So it's really in our best interest to have the most representation as possible. And I guess I would like to try that first because I think it would work. I think that's why I suggested that idea. But of course, I also understand that it can be a fluid process, and I'm happy with that.
My first thought with that is there, maybe some kind of, when community council chairs are elected, there's a lot of people that know exactly what a community council chair does, right? So is there some kind of an education piece that if we were to outline 4 quarterly meetings, that maybe the first month of each quarter, we can set that. But at the minimum, just say, hey, we're going to have 4 meetings per quarter. Then when they're elected council chair or trying to be elected council chair, perhaps there can be an education campaign that part of the responsibility of community council chair would be to attend these 4 meetings through the year. So can we address your concern with them feeling maybe a little bit more step up to the plate with that responsibility, but not necessarily close it off to the other community council members?
I think that's brilliant.
So.
I would say with respect to that, doing the trainings on school community council, I think in as much as we recognize some of our communities are not able to have full, robust councils, I think that chair election, my only concern is that chair election is like a lamb to the slaughter sometimes. And it's like, who's the sucker who's going to get this job, right? And it's usually the person who talks the most in the meeting, right? And so it's not necessarily because somebody is super duper excited about being the council chair. And if that goes down or that responsibility increases and it's known in advance, we might have a dearth of vacancies on our, I don't know. I'm just speculating, right?
It's a good point, Ben.
Ben, do you have, I'm going somewhere with this, but I'm asking kind of a side question. Do you have a list that you give to community councils? This is what should happen this month. This is what should happen this month. Is there a list that you give them of that?
Yeah, so we push out a regular agenda for them so that they know this is what you're supposed to be working on at any given time during the year. Now, obviously, they can work and modify that and add things. This is just to help give them resources to know how to manage those things, with the idea being that many of our council chairs don't know how to put together an agenda. They don't know what the responsibilities or the timelines are with respect to land trust and proposing plans. They might forget that we're also supposed to be implementing a plan at the current time and getting a report on that. So there's obviously a lot to that. And so, yeah, we do provide a lot of resources on that front.
And in many of our community councils, the principals just make it the agenda because the
community council chair, yeah. So, I mean, I guess along with that, I mean, I like that idea. I understand exactly what you're saying, but I also appreciate the other part that, it's like dragging teeth to get some community councils actually going. Can it be maybe kind of a compromise that the responsibility of the chair to, if they can't attend the meeting or, for whatever, or appoint somebody from their community council, hey, you're going to be this, or that way it's not on the chairperson to be the one responsible, but just somebody appointed?
Yeah, I mean, it could basically be in the conversation of who serves on your community council, that in these quarterly meetings, they need to have a representative from their school.
And we're not indicating, we wouldn't be indicating it had to be the same person. It could be a different person each time.
Because anybody can take a few notes and come back and report to the council. So it could be just not centered on them. I want to make sure, to also remember, we're dealing with volunteers. These are parents who are stepping up. This doesn't come with a stipend or anything like that. And so, we need to, I mean, our hope is that those serving on the community council or those that are involved, and there is a lot of, passion behind that and wanting to make good plans and see their kids' education improve. But at the same time, we have to be careful that, they are volunteers. I just wanted to put that out there as a reminder.
And on the other hand, if you had a community councilor that was super eager, 3 or 4 of them could show up, and that's awesome. We're happy to have all of them. Yeah.
So are you kind of just taking, this is a first reading tonight, and I see Ben kind of taking notes of this. And so when this comes back next month, it will be listed as a final action.
Where did we land on how many meetings?
I think what's floating around the most is 1 per school quarter. So not quarterly on the calendar quarterly on the school quarters.
So I'm thinking that would be, I interpret that to be like September, November, January, or February, March, or February, May, April.
April.
Yeah.
Rich, did you have a comment?
I was just saying yes to that question. And and this is an agenda item for another board meeting or a superintendent report, but as we engage in the strategic planning process, parent and family and community engagement rises in prioritization and this is a piece that would be situated very well into that, and will be part of a larger effort to further increase and maximize opportunities for that family and community engagement. So.
Any other feedback for Ben? And he'll get to work to, revise this and bring it back for final action next month. Any other suggestions? And by any means, if you think of something after today, it's okay. We can talk. So, any other things? Oh, was that you, Doug? I'm sorry. Okay, Doug, well, we have your number too, so we'll reach out. Did you have a final comment, Nicole?
Well, I just wondered, just a point of order, do we, I just lost it. Do we propose it and second it and then propose some changes, or are you just going to change it? How do
we do need an action item tonight to propose it with and give him some of these backbone changes. Yeah, we'll still do an action item. I haven't got that far yet.
So
I move that we approve the Granite School District Community Council policy with allowing or asking that each community council be represented at 4 meetings per year, and see where it goes from there.
I second Terrence.
Terrence, wow. All right, so I have as a motion on the table, first reading to approve our new district community council policy with the requirements with the changes including having at least one community council member represented in from each school and attending those 4 school quarter meetings per year.
And I'll look forward to the changes.
That's a mouthful. All right, we have a first reading. Did somebody second it? Julie, you seconded it. All right. Any further concerns or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
You didn't want to add any of what you threw in?
Yeah, I think I was kind of tickled. Some of that collaboration stuff. Oh, I didn't hear you, Doug.
But I'm okay with how it is.
Oh, yes, that is you. Sorry, you're moving on without us. That's good of you.
Well,
okay.
we really kind of liked how Ben did it, Doug.
No, Doug, take it.
Let's keep you here.
So the next, okay, back on track, people.
Does this bring us in compliance with all USBA or USBE rules? Okay.
And that's the reason. That's the whole reason for this revision, right?
No. On this topic.
This is a pretty straightforward policy for me. Any other questions or concerns, board? With that, I'll entertain a motion.
I motion that we approve a first reading of Article 9A. Oh, yeah, don't say all that right. Self-reporting requirements and background checks.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve as a first reading the self-reporting policy. Any further concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thanks, Doug.
Have a good vacation.
All right, next on agenda, we'll turn it over to Dr. Nye for our superintendent report.
Excellent. Thank you, Board President. Ben, any luck on that visual?
Let's see.
This is not Ben's doing. This is mine. I thought I'd be able to plug in my computer here, but we operate as we're set up. So I do not lay that at Ben's charge, but my own. To provide a visual, while he's taking a look at that, just want to bring up a couple things. This last week has been very busy as we've engaged in preparing for the beginning of the school year. We had our administrator kickoff meeting. A lot of energy, a lot of good energy, a lot of anticipation for what this school year will bring, and a lot of lessons learned and some professional learning associated with that for our administrators. Thank you, Ben. You've worked the miracles, and I can come down there actually to finish my report. But before I get to this deck, I also had a chance to attend the kickoff for our central kitchen and the cooks and things. A lot of energy with that group, and had a chance. Dave was there as well. Had a chance to just speak briefly to them, and in a district our size, we explore clever ways to get a message out, and had an opportunity to record just about a 5-6 minute video that was played in staff meetings, welcoming the teachers, particularly to the school year, and appreciate who they are and how they go about their work, bringing them their best selves to our students every day, and how much we appreciate them. Going back to a message, President, about expressing sentiments of gratitude. So I'm going to transition down there just for a moment. So as we consider, as we do launch this school year, a couple things. One, it feels familiar to where we were last year. As we planned on providing educational services during a global pandemic, we're still experiencing those effects, as we have heard here this evening. And I'll address a couple of those issues as we go through this. But really our primary purpose is to provide that educational excellence and do it in a safe environment, the best that we can, and personalized learning environment. And then I'll just explore just for a moment what those opportunities might look like as well. First off, granted student learning and engagement options. One, we've built up our online learning platforms where we have Granted Online Live, K-12, primarily K-8, but there is all option there also for 9-12 if they're participating solely online, for them to engage in that. And this is real time. So if you imagine a third grade teacher having their screen with their faces of their students on that screen, being able to engage in that tier 1 instruction and having opportunities to be taught and responded to in real time. Often referred to as synchronous learning, but we went with Online Live because that is more familiar in its descriptive title. And then we have the Granted Online Self-Paced, and Granted really has led the district in this option for about 10 years, if I understand correctly, where it is a virtual or distance learning platform, but it's asynchronous, where they move through at their own pace. They have access to resources and instruction, but it's not necessarily live. And so for families, and this is that personalized space, who really feel like this is in the best interest of their child, given the current conditions, and their child engages and does well in an online or virtual distance learning platform, we have that available for them to be able to provide that. We're also pleased, as we are, to engage in in-person instruction, where a lot of the country last year did not engage in in-person instruction. Utah really did. And we learned a lot in that process of providing and creating that safe learning environment. And it should be noted that the in-school transmission of COVID-19 was significantly less than the community transmission of COVID-19, meaning our layered approach, and I'll look at that in just a moment, really was effective at reducing in-school transmission. Some of those, and this is why I had to have the visuals tonight, right? Instead of just talking to it from the mic, just give you something to look at while I do talk. But as we begin the school year, we're building off of what we did last year, where we're taking a look at what does sanitation, heightened sanitation look like in our schools, the hygiene for our students, the hand sanitizers, the frequently hand washing, coming in and out of the classrooms or in and out of the lunchroom, in and out of the playground. What does it look like to make sure that things are sanitized and we're practicing proper hygiene? Personal protective equipment. We were talking a little bit about that already this evening, and we'll dive into that just a little bit further. But we have and strongly encourage the use of personal protective equipment, whether that be masks or face shields or combination of masks and face shields, those plastic dividers that we have set up strategically. I'll go in that in just a moment. We're also maximizing that, again, like we did last year, that physical distancing. If you think about cohorting students, meaning we have seating charts, which aren't so dissimilar pre-pandemic, but we're a little bit more intentional in how we create those seating charts, what those transitions look like in the halls, who's sitting next to who during lunch. That in the event of a COVID positive case, we're able to contact trace and see who was exposed. Again, removing unnecessary furniture in a classroom to be able to spread out and create that space. We're encouraging vaccination. You know, we partnered this board, this district, similar to the one that I came from. We aligned ourselves very closely with the health department, and the health department's recommendations and the guidance we've adopted as our own, and part of that is encouraging vaccination, where for those students who have the opportunity to be vaccinated to take advantage of that. We're being very intentional on student and staff well-being. There are greater instances of mental health and behavioral concerns, not only in our students, but also in the adults that serve our students. None of us are immune to the effects of the heightened conditions, often stressful conditions. And so providing additional resources for students, having or lowering the ratio of having licensed clinical social workers available to our students. For staff, connecting them to the resources in their community, wellness programs, and additional therapists and things that we provide are already covered through our insurance and increasing the opportunity. The district, the Granite School District, really let out on test to stay and testing opportunities. We are also poised to do those as we partner with the health department, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But also just making it generally available. We had out here in our north parking lot a mobile testing unit, and being able to make that available to our staff and our students and the community generally at some points, and how we look at that. As was mentioned in the use of ESSER funds, ventilation, those HVAC systems, make sure we have proper airflow, proper air filtration, and then just the encouragement, know our symptoms. If we're not feeling well and we have COVID-related symptoms, we ought to stay home and until we can get a test to determine that it's not COVID. So these layered prevention strategies that we incorporated last year, again, were effective for the most part. Now, you'll also hear me say any cases are too many. I mean, we wish it were otherwise, and we truly wish that we didn't have any cases or any transmission, but we have been able to show that our strategies that we are incorporating again this year were effective last year, which bodes well and has confidence as we move forward. And grateful, frankly, for the vaccination being available for staff. Last year, we were starting the school year without that level of protection. So we are grateful that that's been made available. And while we can't determine an exact number because our staff can get the vaccination anywhere and we don't ask that information, but we have on pretty good estimate that about 85 to 90% of our staff have been vaccinated, taken advantage of that. As was mentioned this evening, and as was determined by the County Council and the Public Health Department, Utah law, and that's 53G 9210 subsection 5, prohibits local education agency, the governing board, the state superintendent, this is actually the language right out of that law, or a school from requiring face masks to attend or participate in in-person instruction. don't need to read the rest of that. At the bottom line, the board does not have the legal authority to make that a requirement. The board may strongly encourage and continues to do so the use of masks in our schools. And we're making that available for families. We will have reusable cloth masks for our students and staff. We also are stepping up our efforts of providing N95 or KN95 masks and making those available for our students and staff. Don, any updates? You and I spoke a couple days ago, but any updates on the N95 or KN95 mask order?
Some updates. We've taken the initiative as a district to order a batch of those ourselves. Those are being placed, are on order. Should receive those within a week to 10 days, hopefully. And then, of course, the state of Utah and Salt Lake County Health have made offers of KN95 masks. We're working with them on orders and shipments. We don't have any arrival dates on the state or the county masks.
Excellent. As I understand, we do have some in warehouse.
And we do have an awful lot of adult-sized KN95 still in stock and at schools. We've completed a survey, and so we know which schools have how much. They're welcome to order additional from the warehouse at any time. And then, of course, different schools have different supplies that they've ordered historically and are still in stock at their school.
Excellent. Thank you. So as you can see, we're addressing it a couple different fronts. While we may not be able to require them at the moment, to do so would be operating outside of the law. We are making them available, strongly encouraging them, and even increasing the level of protective masks to be available for students and staff. As I had already mentioned, those protective barriers that we had purchased and put in place, whether you're at the main office and checking in, or whether we have some situations where some may be immunocompromised or may need extra levels of protection, we're going to do our very best to meet each student and staff where they're at and what their needs might be to provide as much protection in that personal protective equipment category as we possibly can. Knowing that we do partner, and you've heard me say this multiple times, we partner with parents to raise children, and we have to do so as we operate within the guardrails of public health orders and state law, and we'll continue in that commitment. And I will just say, as things played out today with the county council and the Department of Health, been in contact with both members from both of those groups, and I really appreciate the civility in the engagement of the discussion. When I think of education and the things that have been most divisive in my 20 years in education, I can't think of anything that's been more divisive than this. This issue with and again, that's just speaking, there's been other issues in educational history that have been far more divisive than this, but in my career, there hasn't been anything quite like this. I will say, as we engage in the conversation with our health department and with our elected officials, as school starts, we will be monitoring the number of cases, COVID positive cases, transmission in our schools, and it is part of a very ongoing and dynamic conversation. In terms of what was true today, in terms of decisions making, I know that there are several willing to keep the door open and keep the conversations going as school begins. And so we'll very much be at that table and having those conversations as well, as it impacts our families and our communities. Quarantine procedures, very different, not very different, I won't say very different. This is true as of earlier today. And as you recall, last year, these things have had a tendency of changing quite regularly. But quarantine procedures, as it is today, if someone is exposed to someone who has tested positive to COVID-19, and that definition remains true, you're within 6 feet of an individual who tested positive for COVID-19 for more than 15 minutes in a 24-hour period. And it should be noted that's a cumulative 15 minutes, not a consecutive 15 minutes. As defined. So someone becomes exposed, there's a few options that students and staff may continue to come to school, and this is in direct alignment with the Salt Lake County Health Department. One, a student or staff does not need to quarantine if they've received the full series of the vaccination. It's been 2 weeks after their second shot. And of course, all of this is predicated on if they're not showing symptoms, right, after their exposure. Two, and these are ors, these aren't ands, of course, these are ors, or you and the person who tested positive are both wearing masks. That was the change that we experienced last January and really lifted the burden of the number of students and staff, frankly, that were quarantined. Was there a hand? Okay.
Just clarification, that is not including outside, correct?
That is, thank you. Great clarification. This is indoors. Outdoors, different rules apply in terms of what that exposure looks like. Although through the process of contact tracing, if there's a situation where it has been determined the other student know that they were playing hand in hand, so to speak, right, even though we're encouraging a little more separation than that.
They were kissing on the playground.
Yeah, we discourage the kissing tag, right? Yeah, then, then they may get contact traced and the health department would notify them and we would engage in that. But generally speaking, yes, this is largely for indoor exposures. If individuals tested positive, and again, the health department will verify all this information and provide us the information of who needs to be quarantined and who doesn't. But if someone's tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 90 days, they also do not have to quarantine and may continue to come to school. If someone's been exposed, student or staff, and it was mask on mask, they have not been vaccinated, or they don't fall into those other categories, they may choose to continue to come to school, but they are also, in doing that, choosing to wear a mask for at least 10 days. 7 days, right, if they get a negative test, then they can remove the mask. But this is new this year, to where if someone's exposed, they're not vaccinated, and they don't meet the other conditions, they can continue to come to school if they choose to wear the mask. And then if you were wearing a KN95 or an N95 mask and the other person wasn't, you haven't been vaccinated, and that doesn't apply, then you still may come to school and will not be quarantined. Questions on quarantine. We should see, under these allowances and quarantines, we should see a significant number of, a significantly fewer number of individuals going into quarantine, as long as the transmission rates hold true. But this is where the county health department is leading us as we think about prioritizing in-person instruction, as they do as well.
Question.
Yes,
Did
Chris?
the case numbers stay the same, the 1,500 threshold, or whatever the percentage was, did that stay the same? 2%?
Nice segue, beautiful segue, right? So that's the test to stay. What triggers that? And again, that's coming out of state law. Last year it was in public health orders, which under last year had the effect of law. It's a little bit different this year, but this is actually in 53G9-210, that same section of code. But according to state law, testing will only be required if a school has more than 30 positive COVID-19 cases with less than 1,500 students. With more than 1,500 students, it's 2% of the enrollment of that school that would trigger a test to stay event. And then we would engage in that test to stay event.
Yeah, last year we didn't have to test to stay in any of our elementaries.
No.
This year with the variant, how have young kids dealt with the tests?
Thankfully, we have the saliva test that's available. The health department does, and they're willing to use that, although they prefer, because they don't have many of those, that shallow nasal swab. And for students, it makes your eyes water a little bit. They might flinch a little bit, but it's certainly less invasive than the pharyngeal swab, right? So none of us are engaging in that. But from what I've seen in elementary students that have taken it, they squiggle a little bit, but they typically respond fine.
Prove that, right?
Yes. Yep. Parent approval. I'll segue into that in just a moment. If you imagine if we reach the 30 cases in any of our schools, if it's a junior high, those students that have had a chance to be immunized, if a child's been immunized, they don't have to test. They've been immunized, unless they're showing, of course, symptoms, and then we would definitely encourage them to test. So they can return to school well and have a negative result. And that goes, there used to be test to play last year. There is no more provision for test to play for our extracurricular activities currently per the health department. So little different environment in terms of what we're being asked to do, but very, very familiar in many of the things we're still being encouraged to do. And to your point, Terry, we don't give a test unless we have parental permission. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. We did that through the Red Cap system largely last year. That has some forms built in. It's an electronic system. Parents get an email, they sign up, they give their approval. That includes the Utah Department of Health for their purposes as well in tracking. And we have a couple decisions that we can make. One, we can get the parents' permission for the whole year. We do have that allowance, that they only have to give you permission once. But we have to be very clear and specify that you are signing or you're approving this for the whole year. Or we can do it each term, like as we break down the school year into terms, we could do it that way. And regardless of how we set that up, I would encourage parents to sign up for the whole year, but they can rescind that at any time. They can take that back. Test to stay, students are tested as part of that test to stay. If they test positive, rules apply. Health department, they need to go into isolation for 10 days, even if they had symptoms before the test and are fully vaccinated. If you test positive, you're positive, you need to isolate at home per the health department. They may return to in-person after they're done with that, similar to last year. May continue in-person learning if they test negative and do not have any symptoms of COVID-19, right? That's the intent of that state law. If students refuse or parents refuse to have their students tested, it's treated, as it was last year, as a non-confirmed positive, if you will, even though it hasn't been tested, and the same rules apply, that they need to stay home for 10 days during that test to stay event. Now, of course, they can get a test at any time, and then it comes negative, they can return at any time. They don't have to wait the 10 days. If they, after 5 days, they're like, nope, it's time to go back to school, would like to get the test, we'll certainly make that accommodation for them. Just so you know, as was mentioned, we're very much in the thick of COVID-19 with this new Delta variant. It looks a little bit different. We're pleased that the vaccination's available, but these are on the Salt Lake County Health Department's dashboard. They have a great Tableau, very robust dashboard system that you can click through and drill down into anything essentially related to COVID as it's occurring in Salt Lake County, including vaccinations. So a couple weeks ago, we were just about 50% of students 12 in Salt Lake County, from 12 to 18 who have been fully vaccinated. Now we're almost 60%. So as we get closer to the start of school, we're seeing more and more students who are all eligible getting the vaccine for a lot of different reasons, right? And you can kind of see as we went through these talking points why they would, right? You know, if you get exposed and you're vaccinated, you get to stay. If you get exposed and you play football and you have a vaccine, you get to keep playing, you know, that kind of thing. So we're seeing a greater uptick in numbers of students eligible who are getting the vaccine. And so we'll continue to monitor this data with the health department, with our elected officials, and navigate it as necessary as we engage in in-person learning. And in summary, questions, comments, considerations, other things that we might, the board may have question on or give input on as we launch into the school year Monday.
Can you send that to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work on that.
Thank you.
Huge.
Thank you. Team effort.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. That was a great presentation to just kind of simplify a lot of the discussions that are he was pretty concise in that, but there are a lot of meetings that take place in order to get that concise data out there. So thank you for putting it together in that format. Very helpful. Right, next is our board report. Clark, do you want to start?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I don't have much to report because of our summer break. But I did have a chance to catch a little bit of the administrator kickoff meeting this past week, and appreciated the Chamberlain speech or speeches that were to come, and wish I could have been part of some of those Chamberlain speeches that hopefully have taken place throughout the district this week. I'm just excited for school to start on Monday, and optimistic for these next few weeks especially, and look forward to a great discussion when we come back in September, looking a few weeks back. The last thing I'll say I'm optimistic about, just as an aside, is the day when Dave Garrett will say the words BYU in a public meeting from the microphone.
Keep waiting.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, so I also was able to attend the administrative kickoff meeting. That was great. I got to go to a couple of the classes. That's a new thing. And I just think we just have phenomenal administrators in our school. They were excited. They asked lots of questions. I think they're ready for Monday. I think they're ready. So that gives me a lot of hope for the school year. I'm also looking forward to some meetings coming up with our PTAs and our community council teacher network meetings. I guess they're new this year. It's kind of a town hall meeting. Okay. I'm excited. I have those on my calendar, and I'm looking forward to being in those schools and seeing our parents and teachers. So I also hope that our plan that looks like we have good layers works and we don't go backward from last year. I'm hopeful that we are pushing the vaccinations and making sure parents are aware of their kids in school, what they need to do to be successful and healthy, and I just look forward to a great school year.
Nicole?
I wish I could say I went to the administrative kickoff, but I was
She was playing in Disneyland.
I was elsewhere. Anyway, but it's good to hear the positive feedback from that. I love that we have continued with some of the things that we learned last year. We have no more papers and papers and papers coming home for registration. I love that it's all online, and it feels like it was much better, went much smoother, at least this year, than it did last year. So I hope we continue to learn some of these things, some of the things that we have learned through COVID, and that we continue to incorporate it. I look forward to seeing what happens with this. I was able to go to an orientation for my 6th grader who is going into the first 6th grade class in Benyon Junior High. And I was thrilled to see, these teachers that are enthusiastic and excited and are there ready to go and ready to teach. And I appreciate all the work that our teachers are doing this week and getting ready for school next week. And I hope they have a wonderful weekend and are ready on Monday. I did get to go with Julie and Connie to the AVID conference, and it was fantastic. I don't know if we all did we do different sections? We did different things. I think we all 3 did different things, but I asked if we could go. I asked Martin if I could go. I said, and I don't know if anybody else wants to go because we didn't do any conferences this year, but I always wanted to know. I see high schools give such a big chunk of money to AVID conference trainings, and I'm like, what is this? I just want to know. So it was really, I now get it a lot more. And I have to tell you, my aha moment there was the teacher in this class of 40 said, okay, can you guys remember who taught you how to take notes? And there were 4 people in the class that rose their hand and said, I remember who taught. And the rest of us are like, nobody ever taught us how to take notes. Oh my gosh. And so it really was like, okay, I feel like I need to get my kids into this because, I feel like, gosh, why didn't somebody teach me this? So it was really very inspiring, and I love talking to the people at the district who were in charge of it and who are leading the way. It made me realize a lot of stuff. I sat there and talked with the Taylorsville network, the person from Taylorsville who was the one that kind of got us all registered. And she and I conferred, and we're like, we have no idea what our tier 2 and tier 3 at our schools are. We don't know what our interventions are. So it really has inspired me to kind of get more involved in my own school as well and see what's going on for especially our secondaries. But anyway, it was a great conference, and if anybody gets a chance to in the future, it's one that I would highly recommend.
I went to the kickoff too. I have always loved the administrative kickoff just because it gets me ready and to be able to intermingle with the principals and see them and know the direction that the district is taking for this particular year. I think it's great, and I really appreciated going to the classes afterwards, after just the initial kickoff. They were really inspiring. So I also went to the AVID and went to the CRT part, so which showed me an interesting part. And as teachers, we'll be professional and teach children to think both sides and not teach their own opinion, perhaps. I think it's not perhaps, they just leave their opinion off and what they think, and teach children and the inclusion. I think it was very interesting, very enlightening to me. So I have grandchildren in Taylorsville. I have a 6th grader and a 7th grader going into Eisenhower. So they are excited. They really enjoyed going to their little section today. And then a 9th grader that's just beginning into Taylorsville High. So I'm all interested in how they do and what it will be like when they get into the school, and get some feedback from them. It'll be fun. Anyway.
I just want to qualify that, Connie, when we did this training and it was called CRT, it didn't mean critical race theory. It meant CRT was for culturally relevant teaching.
Right.
And so I just felt like that was important to point out. The theme for me has been this week and this month has totally been just watching teachers and administrators be experts in their field and recognizing how much effort they put into getting ready for our kids and to honing their craft. So I just made this decision this week that I was going to try and leave for events a little early or get home a little late so that I could just stop in at whatever school I was passing and just walk around the hall for a second, see what was happening. And, one school I went and there were teachers gathered in their PLCs and listening to their conversation when they didn't know I was eavesdropping was just thrilling to hear what they were saying. And another one, at the high school that I went to, I was walking down the hall in the counseling center, and every single counselor had a student in their office and a parent, and the individual attention that they were giving those kids was inspiring to me. And then I went to some elementaries. I went to like 4 elementaries all on the same day, kind of on a route home. And they were having trainings kind of as a district. All the 4th graders of this area were in this school and all the 3rd graders in this school. And the engagement and the excitement was thrilling. And the idea that they were collaborating with other people from other schools in order to hone their craft and even get more ideas outside of their school was just thrilling to me. And so I have kind of caught the bug, and I feel like I just feel really hopeful because I think our teachers are coming back to school with this attitude of, we've got a job to do and we're going to get to it. And I appreciate it so much, and I'm inspired by it and want to be a part of it.
I tried going to the administrator kickoff, but I didn't have my vaccination passport, so they didn't let me in. So, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I went, and it was wonderful. Thank you, Rich. Thank you for your message, and thanks to all those presenters. They did a great job. So I'm here to remind you of next Friday, the 20th, is our USBA Delegate Assembly. That I don't have, 6 o'clock. Friday night is dinner, and then there will be 2 legislators there, and I don't remember who will be there, question and answer. Friday and Saturday are at the Canyons district office is there on 9400 South and about probably 3rd East, yeah. And it's right there on 9400 South. And then Saturday is, let's see here. I think it starts at 8, if I remember right.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. And you need to bring a device because we'll be voting, those that are voting on Slido. It's an app that we use to vote on, so bring some type of device for that. And Stacy, were you able to find out who has been assigned to that?
I can answer that. We did find it. It is Julie and Chris as our 2 delegates at large, and Connie and Clark are alternates.
So.
Thanks to
Chris
Nicole.
and Julie, will you be there?
Yes.
Okay, so
Without looking at my schedule.
our alternates don't need to be there then, okay? And Rich and I will be there also.
You said that's the 28th.
Yeah.
I'm also a voting member.
Yes, yeah, from the superintendent, yeah, so. But thanks for all the efforts. I'm excited for the school year, and I know that many have worked hard to be prepared. A lot of excitement, so thank you.
And thanks, Terry. Terry is our representative. We each have committee assignments as board members in a variety of committees, and Terry is our USBA rep for our district and does a really good job. Good job there. Granite's fortunate between Terry's vote, Rich's vote, and 2 other members. We actually get 4 votes at this delegate assembly. To clarify what that even is, it's a group of school board members and superintendents across the state that meet, and collectively, the USBA, Utah School Board Association, puts forth legislative priorities. Basically, what we're asking the legislature a lot of it relative to funding education and to putting that as one of their high priorities. And so that's exactly what the delegate assembly meets for, and they approve collectively if those really are the top 5 or so priorities. I don't know the number, but anyway, top set of priorities, and then that is what the USBA goes and fights for on the Hill when the legislative session starts in January. So I just want to give the listeners what we're really talking about with the delegate assembly. As far as just my personal report, it's been fun to drive by schools and see on all their marquees the advertisements for back to school or registration or come on in and let us help. I've attended some of those, and you can definitely feel the energy when you walk through the doors of a school right now. I would encourage everybody listening. They had everywhere, the schools I went into, they had their PTA desks set up, and so I would encourage all those. The PTA is a wonderful organization. If you want to help out a school and sign up, that would be awesome. And if you want to go learn a little bit, there's also a community council in those. So if you want to find a way to get involved, those are great areas to get started and learn a lot of just kind of the happenings of the school. I also I've thanked earlier everyone taking part, especially I know the burden is on teachers especially, to get ready for the school year. But at this particular time of year, you can't underestimate the power of a good secretary or school counselor. And I have friends who are both. And sometimes people aren't very nice to the front office when they, can't get exactly what they want. And so I just wanted to, whether you're a secretary at the district office or a front office secretary, wherever you work, that I know this time of year is busy and there's a lot of extra stuff on your plate. School counselors, wonderful. Julia had the opportunity to walk through a counselor hall as well at Granger High the other day, and it was exactly as you reported. It's just everybody is so willing to help get these schedules figured out, and I know that they feel that burden and to take those kids individually and make sure that they have a schedule that works, that involves classes that they enjoy and that they want to take, but also they've got to check boxes on requirements and make sure that kids are on track so they're not just signing up for electives the whole time. And so, there's a lot that goes into that. So I just wanted to give kind of a bonus shout out to our secretaries and counselors at this time of year. Just as a reminder to the board, we have our Enough Said conference that is October 10th through the 12th. This is a smaller conference we participate in where we go and meet up with other districts of similar sizes and challenges. Of course, everything was canceled last year, so we haven't had it for a while, but I just want to make sure those dates are on your calendar. And that is all I have for tonight. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, board. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I motion we adjourn.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, guys, for staying.